Hey, welcome to the Margaret Mclean Show. This has been quite a trial, quite a week. And I've got Eric Faddis. He's just entered the studio. I see him down below. I will bring him up in a second. But wow, we are waiting on the jury here. And it's just been quite a show. I mean, quite a week. I mean, yesterday I was exhausted. And if you can believe it, you guys, I slept in until 10 a.m. because I was doing NBC last night. I came home, poured myself a glass of wine, and listened to the crickets. But yeah, hey, good morning, everybody. So glad to see you again in the chat. Good morning, Chad. Good morning. What is that? Yovi Graziano. It's great to see all of you here. I am on pins and needles, and I am going to bring Eric in. Hello, Eric. I see you down there. I'm going to bring him in, and he's very experienced, so I'm going to introduce him as he comes in. Here he is right now. Oh, hold on. You know me. It takes a second. Oh, there you are, Eric. Can you hear me okay?
I can indeed. Good morning.
I'm not hearing you. Oh, you know why? It's been a long week, Eric. Trust me. I think I have to put these on. Okay, Eric.
Yes, I can hear you.
Sure. Okay, I can hear you now. Great. Awesome. Well, welcome to the Margaret Mclean Show. Thank you for taking the time. And let me properly introduce you. This is Eric Faddis, everyone. He's a former felony prosecutor. He's out of Denver, Colorado, and now he's a renowned trial lawyer with his own practice. Eric really knows the courtroom. Welcome to the show, Eric. We appreciate you being here.
Yeah, stoked to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So here in Massachusetts, we are embroiled in the Lindsay Clancy trial, and it's one of the most, I think, closely watched trials in the nation. Again, we have three victims here, Cora, Dawson, and Kellen, beautiful children, and we have, by all accounts, a loving mother who took their lives. So, why do you think the nation is captivated? Is it because of the mental illness? What loving mother could do this, right? Or is it the criminal mind? What do you think, Eric? Why has this captivated the nation?
Margaret, a number of dynamics at play here. One is that we have three dead kids. That is, provocative and impactful for anybody to hear about. And intuitively, we're like, hey, the justice system's got to respond to this. This person's got to be punished, right? This is an egregious affair. And then you start to learn more. And then you start to learn the context and the perspective. And you start to, it implicates issues of women's health. It implicates a lot of broader issues that I think resonate with a lot of folks. And once they've heard more about the case, now they're kind of saying, gosh, do we need to put this mother in a box for the rest of her life? Are there extenuating circumstances? Are there conditions that may lead to an appropriate acquittal? And so it sort of is a counterintuitive response once you learn a little more about the case. I think those dynamics are at play, and that's part of what's gripped the nation.
Yeah, I agree. And, I think but then you also have, yes, you have the issue of women's health. And how could this happen? Like, I'm the mother of three, and I just can't imagine. And we see those beautiful, beautiful pictures of the children. But then on the flip, so you've got that, but then you've got an insanity defense here in Massachusetts. Will jurors be able to get beyond? It's very hard. You know that it's very hard to win on an insanity defense theory, right?
Oh, very true. Yeah, these,
Yeah.
you see them in movies and TV shows, and you think that this is just a common thing that happens in the courtroom. It is very uncommon to even bring such a defense. It's even less common to prevail on it.
What do you think about here? Do you think, I think it's a pretty strong case to possibly prevail on it. One of the strongest I've seen. What's your opinion on it?
Yeah, this one, I think defense has a good shot, Margaret. I think they are well positioned throughout the trial. I really think the prosecution kind of overplayed their hand. In the beginning, they're trying to vilify this young woman, Lindsay Clancy, and sort of depict her as this monster who was in some calculated fashion offing her own children and, got a satisfaction out of that. She wanted to do that. This was her plan. She premeditated it and everything else. And as the world has watched the trial unfurl, we hear from witnesses, we hear from mental health experts, and it sort of undermines what the prosecution initially came with in terms of characterizing this person, this defendant as a monster. And so I think the tides have shifted a little bit. And I think that was even acknowledged by the prosecutor in their closing. So they can sort of read the writing on the wall. I think the world can. I think we're going in the direction, perhaps, of a not guilty verdict or a hung jury. I think those are the most likely outcomes at this juncture.
Yeah, and by the way, so this morning I heard that the jurors came dressed nicely to court. Sometimes that indicates that they're dressing nicely because they expect maybe after they render a verdict that they'll be interviewed by the press. Do you think that has anything to do with it based on your experience?
Margaret, it's important to kind of read the tea leaves and pick up on the signs that you see, and I think that is a very astute observation. The jurors know it's no secret that the entire world is tuning into this case, and they might be interviewed. They might be, they're likely also going to be interviewed by the attorneys unless it's a complete not guilty. If it's anything but a complete not guilty, they might be interviewed by those folks. Those interviews might be recorded. So I think it's reasonable to infer from that sign that might be headed towards a verdict today.
Yeah, I know. And people are speculating possibly after lunch. So, what happened this morning was also very interesting, and I want to get your perspective on it. So, they had everybody went into court, right? The jury was deliberating, and the jury had a question. And normally, when the jury has a question, we do it in open court, and everybody can see what the question is. Well, they didn't go to, it wasn't public. What they asked for was two pieces of evidence: the bloodied knife and the big bag of prescription pill bottles. And they agreed that they could take them into the jury deliberation room. One of the reasons they didn't have those items in the room is because a knife is considered dangerous if they're getting into a big debate, right? They could be dangerous. And then I guess somebody could swallow the pills. So what do you think about the fact that they asked for those pieces of evidence?
Well, to me, it shows that they are really giving some thoughtful consideration to this case. They're not, just going based off their memory of what happened a week and a half ago. They're saying, hey, let me look at it. Let me feel it. Let me have it in front of me. Let me see what conclusions I might be able to draw from actually viewing those exhibits, those pieces of evidence. So, hats off to this jury for, by no means sort of calling it in and going through the motions. It seems quite the opposite, in fact, that they are giving due circumspection to this case and these pieces of evidence. The knife, I think there's been some questions about the sincerity of the alleged suicide attempt by Lindsay Clancy. And I think that, they want to look at this instrument that was purportedly used during that action to see whether it suggests one way or the other regarding that sincerity. And then the pill bottles themselves, I think that is going to be impactful for anyone to look at that and be like, oh, it's not just one medication. Oh, it's not just two medications. I think it was something in the neighborhood of 10 plus throughout the duration of her medical care. Some interesting requests from the jury today.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think that by analyzing the knife alongside it, whether I'm not sure if do you think they actually were handed that physical piece of evidence? Sometimes, I don't see why they need the actual physical piece of evidence. They can see a picture of it.
Yeah, usually,
I'm just curious.
especially with a knife, usually there are safety precautions taken. Like you said, somebody could get hurt. So oftentimes it is packaged in something that is protective, and they can look at it that way. That would be my apprehension if it did in fact go back to the jury.
Yeah. Someone in the chat said that the knife was denied. I think, let's see, we have a big chat today, so a lot of people are listening to us, Eric, which is awesome. Thank you everybody for joining, and please make sure you give me some questions for Eric here. He's got a lot of experience in the courtroom, so this is wonderful. And again, everybody's really dying to know what we think. Let's see. We have the jury asked for the bag of medication. They also asked to see the knife. The knife was denied. Okay. I thank you very much. I love it how you guys are so on top of this case. Some people are confused as whether, well, so here's a good question. Smiley in New England, good morning. Smiley has been following this case all along. So we've been live streaming every single day, Eric. We have watched it gavel to gavel, and we're divided in the chat. We're divided as to some people think they think Lindsay is guilty and are very vocal about it, and there are others who believe that she was in psychosis. They believe Dr. Resnick, and therefore she belongs in a mental hospital as opposed to a prison. So I also want to get to, what did you watch the closing arguments yesterday?
I was able to view
Ooh.
clips of both sides of closing arguments and have read reports about them as well.
Yeah. So I think one of the interesting things that Reddington did, which we didn't really talk about yesterday, but for his major points, he put quarters down on the table. I forget how many he actually put down, 4, 6, something like that. And the prosecutor countered each one of his points and picked up the quarter and put it in her pocket. I thought that was effective. What do you think about that?
Oh, totally. There is some gamesmanship that goes on during a jury trial, and on top of that, Margaret, at least in my perspective, part of it is you got to put on a show. You got to keep these jurors' attention, not for 1 hour, not for 2 hours, but for multiple weeks on end. And so, in
Yeah.
order to do that, you've got to be engaging. And sometimes you refer to exercises like that in order to make sure folks are paying attention to illustrate your points in a way that is visual, and then for the prosecutor to be thinking on their feet and
Yeah.
counter that same exercise with her own. Kudos to her. That's some high level
Yeah.
practice, I think.
And she got to keep the money. I thought
Probably
that was
similar to
funny.
what she's being paid as a public DA. I used to know.
Exactly. She was able to get herself, let's see, maybe she'd get a Diet Coke with it or something like that. Definitely not a coffee here in Massachusetts. But so what do you think about Attorney Reddington's style? He's older, he's 76 years old. Some people in the chat felt that he was rude to the witnesses on cross. I felt, now there's a difference. He decided not to question some of the witnesses, the friends and the coworkers. But when it came to the expert witnesses, I thought he did a good job because he needed to be in control of that witness. But some people thought he came across rude. What do you think about that? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's tough. So as a defense attorney, sometimes you got to ruffle some feathers. Sometimes you've got to, strongly assert your position, and it might bug some folks. But the thing is, you're on your heels. Your client has been accused of a triple homicide. It's extraordinarily serious. If I'm in there, I'm not playing patty cake with some expert. And if some folks might be rubbed the wrong way slightly because of that, and that's the downside, but the upside is that I'm able to undermine the credibility of that expert who wants to put my client in a box for the rest of her life. On the balance, I'll do that 10 times out of 10. And so
Yeah.
I understand how some folks might not be used to an approach like that. But on the balance, I think Reddington has kept things within bounds. And I think you would know better than me, but in Massachusetts, his demeanor seems like kind of an old school sort of Irish type of approach, and perhaps that resonates with folks in that locale. Y'all would know though.
Oh yeah. Oh, so I was kind of laughing out loud, and I'm sure you guys all heard me in the chat, but some of the stuff he said in closing arguments, like, for example, I thought I could not have gotten away with this. And I don't think as a woman, I could have gotten away with it either. But I loved how he downplayed the prosecution's experts so much. He didn't even say now, Dr. Satoff he just said, "Oh, the guy that testified yesterday." And then Mac, because there was a Dr. Mac, I doubt you'll even pay any attention to what he said, or basically because he was so unqualified. And it just cracked me up how he meandered, I think, in the closing arguments, but it was so off the cuff. And for me, I thought it was very entertaining and I liked it. I definitely thought that he could have stressed the Commonwealth's burden a little bit more. He could have, I think his whole case is about reasonable doubt, because the Commonwealth has to prove that Lindsay Clancy was sane beyond a reasonable doubt. And I felt like maybe he should have really emphasized that more throughout. Reasonable doubt, reasonable doubt. If it's a tie goes to the runner. Maybe talk about the Red Sox. I don't know. What do you think?
No, I hear you. And I think that is such a critical piece for defense in this case, because the jury, technically, they don't have to decide whether Lindsay Clancy was sane or insane. They have to decide if there was reasonable doubt as to whether she was sane. So they might be back there and they might be saying to themselves, gosh, there's evidence on both sides. I don't know exactly. I can't say that she's sane, but I can't say she's out. And if they are wrestling with that sort of a back and forth, what that means is there is doubt as to whether she is sane. And if that doubt is reasonable, that is enough for an acquittal. And the jury need not come to the conclusion that, yes, we believe 100% that she's legally insane. They just need to get to the point where they're saying, we think there's some significant doubt here. We think it's reasonable doubt as to sanity. That alone would be enough for the acquittal.
Yeah, and you wonder if that's what that's what their thought process is right now. If they're dressed nicely, I mean, if they do come out with a verdict today, I think it's going to be not guilty for lack of criminal responsibility. So we have a question here, and Judy, good morning. Judy's been watching this trial with us since the very beginning. So she says, did I hear the prosecutor say Lindsay faked her S attempt, and also that she tried taking her kids along with her too? So which one is it, fake or not? So I can't personally, I'd have to re-listen to that, but I know that they were indicating that she faked her S. So we can't say those words on YouTube, by the way, or I get demonetized, but it is what it is. So I thought that this is what I thought. I thought that they were arguing that she wanted to take her own life, yet when it came time to take her own life, it's hard to do. The body has a natural will to live. At least that's one of their rebuttal experts said that. So, it hurts when you cut yourself. So suggesting that she was perhaps a coward, and I don't remember the prosecutor saying that she faked it. But I also think that she was indicating that, she cut her wrist, she cut her knife. It wasn't bleeding that much. And then she ultimately jumped out the window. So if you guys thought what do you think, Eric? Did you hear anything about faking her suicide attempt? I just said it, her S attempt.
Sure. So I think that there have been many different interpretations as to the evidence and what it might show. One of those interpretations I've heard is that she committed the crimes and then faked the S attempt kind of as a cover-up, kind of as sort of trying to set up an insanity defense from the very jump after these actions were taken, and that, oh gosh, if I just give a little thing here with a knife to my wrist, and then if I jump out of a 2-story thing instead of a 6-story dwelling or something, that sure makes it look like I was insane. So that'll help me get away with this. I think that has been the interpretation of some, and perhaps that could be why the jury wanted to see the knife, to see, hey, did it really look like this instrument was used to try to accomplish something in a genuine and sincere fashion, or instead is this some kind of setting up your defense from the very beginning? And so I think that there's been some discussion about that possible interpretation.
Yeah, and you know what I wanted to know all along? And we didn't have any witness testimony on this. I wanted to know how sharp that knife was. So, for example, in my kitchen, when I first buy a set of knives, and I love to cook, I they are so sharp that I'm really worried I'm going to cut myself. But now, if you were to go grab a knife out of my block, they're not that sharp. So I just wondered how sharp her knife was, and I would have liked to have heard testimony about that because some knives are sharper than others. I mean, can you accomplish what she was trying to accomplish with a dull knife? I mean, I'd like to know.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very fair question, and I think an accompanying question would be, if a person jumps out of a two-story
Hmm.
building, is that really an attempt? Is that really what they were trying to bring about, or was it sort of a flailing maneuver where they didn't know what to do and they were just confused and freaked out?
Yeah.
Or is it something else? Like two stories, that's probably not going to get the job done, although it caused severe damage.
Oh, yeah. By the way, she fell, and that's why we had Dr. Laposada's testimony on that. The issue was how she fell and the fact that there was blood in the shingles. Does that mean she let herself down easier? So there's a lot of controversy over that, and I think one of the biggest questions here in the trial that the jury must be grappling with is we had testimony from Dr. Sathoff, who was the last. Yeah, he was the last rebuttal witness for the Commonwealth, and he's suggested, or it was his opinion that Lindsay was not fully psychotic at the time that she committed the acts, but instead she was possessed by an altruistic filicide, where she was just was so tired of trying. She was trying. She was depressed, and it got to her. So as a result, she decided, I need to take my life, but I can't live without the children because I love them so much. So as a result, she took the children with her and then wanted to, take her own life. But I guess the issue is, so Dr. Sathoff thought that based on what she was doing in those 18 minutes or the 40 minutes, it was very rational. He said, well, the voice that she allegedly heard, which Dr. Resnick, the leading expert, said, he believed in the voice, but this voice that commanded her over and over to, this is your opportunity, or whatever it said, to K the kids, unalive the kids, and then yourself. He didn't tell her how to do it. He didn't tell her where to do it. So she had to have some rational thought as to, oh, I'm going to use the exercise bands. I'm going to take and I'm going to figure out how to knot them. Which child will I take first? So, and then how do I take my own life? So she had to figure out how to do all these things. And then she created that window of time for herself while Patrick was gone. So what do you think about that argument?
Yeah, gosh, if I was the prosecutor, I would have hammered on that so much more because,
Mm-hmm.
like you're saying, Margaret, how many steps were involved with what Lindsay Clancy had to do in order to bring this about? She had to, I guess, allegedly bring up some ruse and get her husband out of the house. When her husband's out of the house, we got to make sure all the children are in the same area. She's got to walk to that area. She's got to find the instrument, the band she's going to use. She's got to position it in her hands in a way that's going to be effective. She has to commit the act on child one. And that's not a 2 3 second thing. That's going to take some time. You got to do that 3 times over. On top of that, she takes a knife and makes that attempt. And then she jumps out of the window. How many steps were taken? And wouldn't a person have to have some conscious awareness of the actions their body is taking, planning, thinking ahead? What's my next step? What's my next action? All of that seems consistent with someone who knows what they're doing. And so if I was the prosecutor, I would have listed those steps out. I think I could have got, more than 30 if you really break it down.
Yeah. Yeah. So do we all think that she could have done more with those 18 minutes? Oh, geez, I forgot to turn I'm so sorry. There goes my phone. See? I forgot to turn my own phone off. Sorry about that. But yeah, so you don't think she stressed that enough in her closing?
I would have gone through, I would have listed out every single step a person would have to take in order to do this. And then say to the jury, is this some person who is just flailing their body around, acting erratically? They have no idea where they are. They have no idea what they're doing or who's around them. If a person is legally insane, we might picture someone, in the streets, like half naked, lighting something on fire. This methodical approach and the actions she took seem inconsistent with that. If I was the prosecutor, I would have hammered on that more.
Yeah, definitely. And I think people bring their own common sense and experience into this. And I've shared with the chat, I'll share with you. I have a very good close family friend who suffers from bipolar 1. So, I've seen what it looks like when somebody's in psychosis. And they were really in psychosis. So at the same hospital. So, but she was able to tie her shoes and do certain things. So the jury's going to be grappling with that. And I think the key issue here is Dr. Resnick, who is the best expert, in my opinion. He did say, listen, there's waxing and waning happens when you're in psychosis. So you can be in psychosis one moment and then be able to function. He used the functioning psychotic, so almost like a functioning alcoholic. So that resonated with me a little bit. But I think it's just going to be so hard for the jury to grapple with. How could you be rational all day, build a snowman with the kids, send text messages and photographs and all that, order takeout, and then suddenly do what you did? It's so hard for me to wrap my head around it. I mean, what
It
do you
is,
think?
and perhaps, on the defense side of things, perhaps that's consistent with someone who kind of snapped, who kind of, was in a relatively stable place some of the time,
Yeah.
and then things went south in a 180 abrupt, jarring fashion. That doesn't necessarily seem like somebody who's like a cool, calculated murderer. That more seems like somebody who had some kind of psychotic break, was not firmly in control, and things escalated extraordinarily quickly with egregious results. That seems to be more consistent with psychosis and legal insanity than someone who knows what they're doing.
Yeah, no, you're right. And again, if you don't know who to believe, and I loved how Reddington said, "Oh, the prosecution, their case is a mess." And then he pointed out to the DA, Tim Cruz, who was sitting in the audience and blaming them for bringing charges. Do you think he went overboard there, by the way? Or is that something
Uh,
you would do?
Absolutely. You got it. We're not, somebody's life is on the line. And in fact, three lives are already gone. And so it
Yeah.
can't get higher stakes than this. And, if there is a presentation that might have a lack of pleasantries, that might be a little raw and real and in your face, well, that's what this case is. And that's what a homicide trial is. And so
Yeah.
if a person is taking that approach, but I think you make a really good point too, Margaret, that could a woman have successfully handled it in the same way that Reddington did, in a gruff, aggressive fashion, and
Ah,
would it have been interpreted by in the same way? I don't think it would, and I'm not sure that's fair.
no, no way. And I'll tell you, way back when, because I know you started out at the DA's office too, like me. So I'll never forget. I was really young, right out of law school, at the DA's office, and in Massachusetts, we have a jury of 6 for OUI cases, operating under the influence. It was a great, I hate to say it, but it was really great practice you usually have 8 in the box, and it was good practice. And I'll never forget, I had a mentor or somebody, there was a male prosecutor who I thought, oh, his style is great. Like he was like, oh, and so I copied his style, and I lost my first 3 jury trials, boom, 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 because it just didn't work for me. So I had to develop my own style, which is more like what I am now, what you see now. But I don't know, did you experiment like that when you were a young prosecutor?
Oh, of
with
course. Yeah.
style.
I was very kind of just the fact in the very beginning, just the facts
Yeah.
and by the book. And I'm riding the white horse and I'm the good guy in there. And we're going to be all above board and all of that. And then what I kind of learned over time was that, really, sometimes that style can lack humanity. It
Hmm.
can lack vulnerability. It can lack these necessary humanistic elements that allow you to build rapport and connect with other human beings, namely the jury. And so I have since pivoted to something that I feel is much more human.
Yeah, exactly. And I have a thought on that. And I just need to answer the question. So here's the question. If part of the analysis is if Lindsay Clancy knew her actions were legal or moral, why is religion taboo for the Commonwealth? And this is a great question. I understand the mass statute, but if morality is at issue, why are moral/religion off limits? And that's a really good question. Eric, did you hear how the prosecutor brought up the mortal sin thing? Yeah.
Yes.
So the prosecutor set it up so twice. So the first time it was with Susan Clancy, who's Lindsay Clancy's mother-in-law, and she's Catholic. Are you a practicing Catholic? Yes. Do you know that I think it's do you know that M is a mortal sin? And boom, objection, sidebar. And then the judge gave a curative instruction. But the second time around, it was one of the Commonwealth's witnesses, rebuttal witnesses, and he met with Lindsay, and he was in part of the interview. He's trying to figure out what her mindset was. So he's is she he asked her a lot of questions ahead of time, and then when they got to the events themselves, she said she heard the voices and she explained what was going on. And then as part of the interview, he's saying I thought he was looking for what was her moral baseline, and she was raised Catholic. He knows that, and there's a priest that comes with the family, as you know, that comes with them every day. So he asked, what is your baseline? Do you believe that M is a mortal sin? And of course, he was explaining it to us, and in the process of that, we got another objection sidebar and another a very stern curative instruction. Now, I also have a little inside information on that. So I was with Sue O'Connell last night doing the NBC station, and she's been in the courtroom every day. And she said there was one woman who was on the jury and is on the jury now actually deliberating. So she was taking notes. And as soon as the mortal sin question number 1 came up, she was horrified. She was like, oh. And then when it came up again, she was horrified again. And she stopped taking notes and sat there like this the whole time. And she's one of the deliberating juries. So based on all of that, what do you think about that? Should that have come in? I know there's separation of church and state. What is your thought?
Also, such a good question because we think about justice systems in days past, including centuries ago, and religion was at times very present in the judicial system, and then over time that has waned. Generally speaking, now courts don't like references to religion in part because they fear it could place some pressure on the jurors. The jurors got to decide, hey, basically, am I letting this person off the hook for a legal reason or not? And if in their mind they're thinking about, gosh, well, this is a sin, and it's maybe the worst sin there is. We're talking about sinning. Could that have an influence on how a juror might see this? They might say to themselves, "Hey, I can't let three young decedents go without something like that. God will be mad at me or something like that." So usually it's not allowed in. But in this case,
Mhm.
Margaret, I actually
Yeah.
think it was probably an appropriate question, certainly of the doctor and
Yeah.
maybe of the mother-in-law on like a conditional relevance basis. What I mean is that the jury has to decide if Lindsay Clancy could appreciate the wrongfulness of her conduct. Wrongfulness, that implicates morality, that implicates
Yeah.
culpability. And
Yeah.
so to ask for the expert to be asked about the mortal sin piece. If Lindsay
Mm,
Clancy responded that, yes, I do believe this is a mortal sin, that's really evidence that
yeah,
she had a moral calculus going on,
yeah.
or at least arguably. And then asking the mother-in-law if she thought it was a mortal sin, she is a sane person, presumably. And if she says yes, and then Lindsay Clancy also said yes to the expert. Well, you've got a mindset, a way of thinking that is contemplating morality among both of those folks. If one is sane, perhaps the other is sane also.
Yeah, I know. You have a good point. I definitely think the second time around, it wasn't as egregious, but man, I'll tell you, the press was all over it, right? So we, for the second time around anyway, at least we are in the minority opinion here, and I think that was a great question that 38 very special. I really appreciate your question because morality is at an issue in what is going on in her mind. Did she know? I mean, that's the crux of the question. Did she know what she was doing was wrong? So yeah, I agree. I agree. Um, and oh, what was I going to get back to? I think it was the style, our style here. So the prosecutor, I thought, had to shift gears. I rewatched her opening statement, and in the opening statement, you know how when you were a prosecutor, or even right now when you try cases all the time. So opening statements. Let me ask you, what is one of the cardinal rules about making promises?
Oh, you never make a promise you cannot keep, because the jury is going to hold you to those representations. And if you can't come correct during that trial, you're going to lose credibility.
Yeah, I agree. And don't you think for opening statements, they're more awake and chippy, and they're taking statements? I mean, they're taking
Oh,
notes.
100%. Yeah, the
Yeah,
jurors are very engaged from the outset of the
engaged.
trial. And then as the days and weeks go on, sometimes that can change.
Mm. Yeah, right. So in this case, the prosecutor, I went and looked at it. She painted Lindsay. So you will hear evidence that Lindsay was very controlling, overly scheduled, very manipulating, et cetera, et cetera. And she was so painted her really in a bad light, just overly controlling. And not one of the witnesses, not one of the Commonwealth witnesses said that. So we had the grandparents, we had Patrick Clancy, we had her co-workers, friends, a number of Commonwealth witnesses, where I think they possibly overtried their case here and played into the defense theories a little bit. But every single one of them, she asked the question: was Lindsay overscheduled? Or and they all said no, no, she was just like normal. And the nanny said it, everybody said it. So why on earth did she make that promise? I think that was a huge mistake.
One of the biggest issues that can happen for an attorney is overplaying your hand. It is going too aggressive when you can't back it up. And I think what happens sometimes, Margaret, is a case might look good on paper. And who is the prosecutor discussing this case with? Well, they're discussing it mostly with their own team, with
True.
people in their office, with people on their side. So sometimes you get in this echo chamber, and these folks are like, oh yeah, yeah, rah rah. This person, yeah, she's terrible. She offed her children. Yeah, manipulative, controlling. Yeah, let's. This is how she is, and how we're going to paint her. And then when you get outside of that echo chamber and into the courtroom, which is much more expansive, different perspectives, different ideas, that sort of a characterization might ring hollow and also might look a little malicious, especially if you can't back it up. Looks like you're trying to assassinate this person's character, perhaps overcompensating for a lack of evidence.
Right, right. No, you have a good point. And I think I know she changed her tune. So everybody who I've talked to, lawyers, everything, I thought she must have really practiced the closing argument, because you had Reddington, rah, 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 rough and gruff and yelling. And she came up cool, calm, and collected, but she had to change her tune from her opening statement. And I thought she did a nice job picking up each quarter and going through each point and saying, well, this isn't the case. this is what the evidence says, picks up the quarter, puts it in her pocket. And then at the end, I thought she did an excellent job describing those children on the basement floor, right? Did you see that clip?
Yes.
Yeah. So I do you think that will resonate with the jurors?
Yeah, and I think as Judy 813 mentioned, the prosecutor had to make a pivot. She had to change the tone of that. I think people were, look, if you're trying to oversell something and you can't back it up, people think you're trying to dupe them. You're trying to pull the wool over their eyes, and they might get insulted. They might be offended. And if you're in a jury trial and that's the juror, you got a problem. And so I think you have to concede things that are just not in dispute. If not, you look like a liar. And so I
Yeah.
think the prosecutor got up there during closing and she conceded that, hey, there are mental health issues going on. That's apparent from the evidence. Doesn't mean she's
Yes.
not guilty for these reasons. But I agree that there was a softer, more conciliatory tone, and
Yeah.
that needed to happen in order for the prosecution to still have a show.
Yeah. And this is a really good point. Look at this point. The prosecutor lost me during the closings when she said Lindsay Clancy didn't, quote unquote, look depressed. I remember that during the family outing at the museum. So first of all, the camera, it was way in the corner of the museum. You could look down, you could see the family. I have to agree with that. What do you think about that? It's a good point. Thank you
Yeah,
for
I,
that
I
point.
think that attorneys have to make observations and draw reasonable inferences from evidence and present that in the most compelling way that they can. And so that's fair. But also, I think it's a little bit tone deaf. It's a little bit arrogant. It's a little
Yeah.
bit like I'm holier than thou, and like, oh, I can look at this person. They're saying she didn't look that depressed. She was probably fine. Well, then you have all these
You can
experts and
fake
this
it.
evidence and this history of medication and treatment
Yeah.
that cuts
Yeah.
against this prosecutor's, what some people
Yeah.
might see as an arrogant opinion, like, oh, well, she looked fine to me, so go ahead and convict
I know. And I think that's a really good point, and I appreciate. That's why I really like this chat because for me, I didn't pick up on that, and it's very interesting. I think now that I'm analyzing this, the Commonwealth's own experts said she was depressed. They diagnosed her with depression, so there was absolutely there's no contention. She was depressed. She was struggling with mental illness. The prosecutor's trying to say that depression, postpartum depression, mental illness doesn't excuse you from criminal culpability. And yes, that's a point that needed to be hit home multiple times. But this, I think, would take away from the prosecutors. They should not have added that at all. They should not. I mean, I get the rational part of it. That part of the argument, she was like, she looked rational. She was able to manipulate the things at the museum. I almost would kind of. I wouldn't have even bothered with that bit of testimony. I don't think it really does anything. Do you? I mean,
I don't think it moves the needle a ton. And I
no.
think the prosecutor could have done it differently. Like you said, they could have described Lindsay's actions, what she was doing, what she was saying, and then argue that that is consistent with someone who is rational, who
Yeah.
is in control of their faculties. But when you take it to the next level of sort of saying someone doesn't look depressed, I've seen other comments where
Yeah.
the folks are talking about if a person's depressed, and especially if they don't want to shout that from the rooftops. They're not trying to broadcast it to the public. It's not always apparent. And you don't know what's going on inside someone else's psyche, inside their being, inside their soul. And to opine as if you do might be
Yeah.
insulting.
Right. Well, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, we all have good days and bad days, and we all have days or weeks or months where, we've gone through a breakup or something, and we're just like, oh, so depressed. But yeah, and when you're invited out to dinner with friends, you've got to put the smile on your face. So yeah, I think
Yeah.
she
Or if
should
you're at a
yeah,
museum with
at a museum with the
family, you might have
kids.
to put a smile on your face. Doesn't mean you're not struggling inside.
Absolutely. So that's actually a very, very good point. That I'm sure some of the jurors picked up on that. Now, there's also another juror on the who actually was chosen to deliberate, and so the reporter told me that he would he loved Reddington and he laughed at all his jokes. Reddington was funny. I mean, he was theatrical. I was cracking up, and when he's, it's like, "Hey, Mac," like calling. So what do you think do you think somebody who laughs at all of the defense attorney's jokes and genuinely likes his style, do you think that's good for the defense?
Oh, hey, that's some next level advocacy. Look, putting on a trial is
Oh,
itself so difficult and
yeah.
so consuming of mental resources, emotional resources. And if you can be, stunting on them and you're showboating in there with jokes and stuff, I think that can be very effective if you do it right. And
Yeah,
on
you have
top
to
of
do it
that,
right.
Margaret,
Yeah.
these jurors are human beings. These are people. And gosh, think about a work situation or something where you have to decide between two people advocating different positions. Well, if you like one a lot more and they're making you laugh and you have a good rapport with that person, just from a human perspective, you're more likely to side with them. So yeah, that can go a long ways. Even though
I
it's
think,
not evidence they're
yeah,
supposed to consider,
right. I
jurors are
know.
humans.
Yeah, jurors are humans. And then my understanding too from the same reporter is the foreperson of the jury was she's older. She's in her like 70s and she's very the reporter described her as almost like an academic type of person. But she took very great notes. She leaned forward and listened to the witnesses, and witness would say something, she'd nod along with the witness. So she seems, according to the reporter, she seems very, and the reporter is very astute. She's been doing this for a long time. She's a friend of mine. So this woman seems like to me, if you have a foreperson who's like that, you'd think you'd want to go through every bit of evidence. You'd think you'd be looking at everything and go into next week. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? How long do you think this jury's going to deliberate here? I mean, it's a guess, but
So in terms of the type of juror, on the defense side, sometimes we're looking for someone like who you just described, or someone like an engineer who is
yeah,
going to, in a calculated fashion, analytically pick this apart. We're not just going to, be overborne by the accusation of three young decedents. Instead, we're going to go piece by piece. We're going to break it down. And sometimes when you do that, holes emerge, weaknesses emerge, an inability to connect the dots can emerge, and that sounds like the type of juror who might be the foreperson here in terms of being an academic. She is probably not going to let just the emotionality of what happened sway her one way or the other, and I think that behooves the defense.
yeah, I think so too. I remember as a prosecutor, I didn't want engineers or academics really on my jury because I felt that they would find reasonable doubt. They would, overanalyze things and,
Yes,
look at my burden beyond a reasonable doubt. So I felt that they would be good for the defense. So I think you have a good
I'm
point
with you.
there. Defense all the way. I mean, what are your predictions as far as now? Given the gravity of this case, I've always felt that they're going to be looking at those autopsy photos. They're going to be looking at the photos of the beautiful children, and let's see if I can figure this out. How to, there we go. There's Lindsay with her children. Um, they're going to be looking at photos just like this, and therefore, I would think because of the gravity of it, they would take longer. What do you think? Let's see what else I
You
have on my.
know, Yeah, I think with the duration of this trial, one homicide trial can take a long period of time during deliberations. We've got three charges of that here, so
Yeah,
I think they have a lot to digest, a lot to go over, and it's going to be gut wrenching back there. Like you said, with those photos, any human being with a heart is going to have a reaction, and the question will be, in part, whether they can sort of restrain their more visceral impulses and instead look at what the law is, apply it to the facts, and try to not have this heart wrenching aspect of it sway things one way or the other, because under the law, that's not an element, it's not a piece of this
right.
in terms of what they have to decide.
Right, exactly. And I
They're
remember
not
they
they're not
took a
deciding how
view.
sad was this. It's very sad, but that's a
Oh,
different inquiry.
it is. You're absolutely right. And here's an observation. So Lindsay Clancy walked each child to the basement one at a time. Well, we don't know. Somehow they got them all in the basement, and yeah. So the order of what happened here. Dawson was. They believe, or they testified that he was first, and he was a rambunctious toddler, and he did get bruises. So, the jury's going to be thinking about how long was their deliberation here. Second, you had Cora, who's the 5-year-old, a little girl, and I just can't imagine each act. And then third, the baby, right? So then she goes up, she's able to climb the stairs. We had Ian Whiffen testify about that. I've got to believe, even if there are jurors, like perhaps the foreperson who's going to go through, find reasonable doubt, there's going to be at least one that would be here, would be on the side of PQ 190. What do you
Uh,
think? I mean,
that's
that's
very
hung.
reasonable. Just
Yeah.
as I was saying earlier, I think there are around 30 or so steps in which she had to engage in a rather methodical fashion and a rather arguably rational fashion, just in terms of compelling your body to take these actions, planning what the next action will be. And so I think some folks are certainly looking at this saying, hey, a lot of people have mental health issues, and I'm by no means minimizing what Lindsay Clancy
Right.
was going through, but other people have experienced that and have not engaged in this kind of egregious conduct. So we're going to let her off the hook for it. I think reasonable folks have come to that position as well, which is in part why this case is so polarizing.
Yeah, exactly. So what do you think about, I've got Patrick up here, and that, watching him on the stand, I thought that was, geez, I think it was just heart-wrenching. And my understanding is that 911 call, which I haven't heard, they didn't release that to the public, but if you were in court that day, you would have heard it. Heart-wrenching. And the fact that Patrick Clancy is on this, really is on the side of the defense. He came out with a public statement asking for forgiveness for her former wife. And what do you think about that? Will that influence the jury as they deliberate?
A few things on that, Margaret. One,
Yes.
Patrick Clancy to me seemed like he was wilted with sorrow. Look at this photo
Mm,
right here. That is someone, he didn't appear to be faking it. He didn't appear to
no.
be happy that he has a new life or something like that. He appeared to be annihilated emotionally because of this. And so why in the world, as a prosecutor, do you call him as the first witness? On almost every question he could, he was fitting in points for the defense. That is not the
Yeah.
tone you want to set from the beginning. Is if there's anyone who should be upset about this besides the decedents, it's their father. And my gosh, he is in support of the defense. You better believe that goes a long way in how the jury is evaluating what happened and the impact of what happened.
Oh yeah. I mean, just look, this picture is a good one, of him, and then I feel so, I'm not going to get into it. So I wrote a Substack article. I don't know if you've gone on Substack at all, but I have written an article debunking every single one of those awful conspiracy theories about Patrick Clancy doing it. And I just feel so badly that people, it's clickbait. Conspiracy theories sell. But if anybody's interested in that, check out my Substack at Margaret Mclean show. I think that's it. But yeah, I mean, why do you think that all these conspiracy theories are swirling around in this modern day world we live in?
Sure. So, 30 years ago, if this case was going to trial, some folks in Massachusetts might hear about it. They might not. They might read it in the paper. They're probably not going to go into the courtroom. They're probably, the vast majority are not going to see video of any court proceedings. And certainly if we're talking, 60, 70 years ago. But
Yeah,
here, we've got access. We can tune in. If it was still going on, I could be at work on a break. Let me pop this up and check it out. I'm in
right,
Colorado.
right.
And I think that is the case for millions and millions across the country. So the fact that it's been more exposed, you have more voices, you have more perspectives,
Hmm.
and you have some folks who are bored. You have some folks who want the truth. You have some folks who see things and interpret it some way. They put that opinion out into the ether. That's kind of a saucy,
Yeah.
stimulating idea to at least consider these conspiracy theories. And I think it sort of snowballs in certain circles, gets bigger, and all of that would not have happened 30 years ago. It certainly wouldn't have happened 70 or 80 years ago. So I think it's in part a function of how our society and communication and social media has changed.
Yeah, I think so too. And do you think it's spillover from the Karen Reed trial?
That's,
I'm sure you
that's a
followed
very
that
good.
one.
I haven't thought of, oh, yes. And I haven't thought about that, but that was in Massachusetts too. And so
Yeah.
it seems
Oh,
like that region's audience is sort of primed for notions about that things that might not be exactly how they appear. And gosh, on the Karen Reed trial, I think that I think those purported conspiracy theories, there may have been some merit to some of them.
yeah.
And so
Yeah,
I
I
think
agree.
folks are more receptive now, especially in Massachusetts, to such ideas and at least entertaining them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I thought that it was some sort of a spillover, but there was. I agree with you. There was a difference there because there at least you had a. We did have the corrupt Massachusetts State Police Proctor, and of course,
Proctor.
anytime you get into police corruption, you're also going to get conspiracy theories. And I wanted to ask you, in Colorado, what do they do with the insanity defense? Is it entirely on the prosecution to prove beyond a reasonable doubt sanity?
Not entirely, no. The defense has to raise it. They have to meet a standard evidentiarily, and then if they meet that standard, the burden shifts back to the prosecution. But in Massachusetts, defense doesn't have a burden at all. They don't have to put forth evidence of this. Rather, the prosecution has to disprove insanity, and it can be very difficult to prove a negative, to prove that something is not the case. That's harder than proving an event happened, than proving
Yeah.
what the color of a traffic light was at a specific time. You can prove an affirmative thing, but to prove a
Right.
negative is much harder.
Yeah, well, I think here the defense does have to raise, I don't think it's much at all, some evidence. So when she first walks into the courtroom, she's presumed sane, but all they have to do is raise some evidence that she was in psychosis at the time, not criminally responsible. Very little. It's almost confusing. Then to the prosecution, and in some states, and we're in the minority. So in some states, the pro it's up to the defense to prove by preponderance of the evidence that their client was not criminally responsible or was insane at the time. So I think that that is quite a big difference amongst the states.
Oh, it's a huge difference, and it's a huge difference in this case. The fact that the prosecution has that burden and defense does not can make all the difference in the world. That's why in the Constitution we've enshrined the presumption of innocence, because we want the
Right.
government to have the burden in terms of general guilt, and that's so much harder to meet. The government has the resources, the investigative know-how, and personnel and everything else to work up a case, whereas a defendant charged with something, it's a lot harder for them to meet a burden. And so that's why that's usually how the arrangement of the burdens is it's on the government. And the fact that it's almost all on the government in Massachusetts, and this makes it even a more uphill battle for the state.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, yeah. It really is. That's what I've said all along. I've predicted that because the burden is so high in the state, and that's where I think Kevin Reddington should have hammered home more. I thought he was great. I mean, I am no way it will ever be as good as Kevin Reddington. So I'm going to say that right now. He's a veteran attorney here in Massachusetts. So, by far, I really respect him. But hammer away on that reasonable doubt. What would you have done? Like, what if you're defending the case, what would you have done differently? Of course, it's easy for us to sit here Monday morning quarterback. But
Oh, of
what are your
course,
thoughts?
yeah.
Yeah.
You know, Framing is really important. And so I would have framed so these jurors, they're not professional jurors, right? They don't do this for a living. And so they might not know exactly what to do once they get back in that deliberation room. So I give them some recommendations, and I might frame an issue such that, hey, look, we don't have to prove that she was insane. The government has to prove that she was in fact sane. They haven't done that. But when you're in that back room and you're going back and forth with your co-jurors, and you're saying, one person is saying, yeah, I think she was sane for these reasons. Another person is saying, no, I don't think so for these reasons. And you're kind of stuck. You're kind of like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Both of those seem plausible, which I don't really know which way to go. That not knowing which way to go on that equates to reasonable doubt as to whether
Yeah.
she was sane. You don't have to
Yeah.
determine whether she was sane or insane. You got to determine whether you have some doubt in your mind as to whether she's sane. And there's all the doubt in the world, is what I would say as defense attorney.
Right. And also, you know what he could have done? Of course, people seem to like the quarters. It would have been interesting to do something with the quarters at the end, like where he throws them up, or he like reasonable doubt, like or use reasonable doubt number one, reasonable doubt number two. He could have done a lot more with reasonable doubt with the quarters. I mean, now that I'm thinking about it, because those quarters were interesting. So here's a question. Why did the judge choose the four-person before alternates were chosen? So I also think that is a state by state thing. Here in Massachusetts, the judge chooses the four-person, and what goes into that, I think probably choosing, the judge knows what the background is for each of the 18 jurors, so he probably went back and looked at the questionnaire and he also noticed, he looks at the jury too, so he noticed who's attentive, who's taking notes, who would be best to lead this jury. I mean, what are your thoughts on that, Eric? What do you do in Colorado?
That is a new thing to me, because in Colorado,
Oh.
the jurors decide among themselves who will be the four-person. It's certainly no shade to Massachusetts, but I would have some concern that, a judge is a human just like anybody else, and they have a lens through which they view things that might color the way in which they interpret something. And so they might think, I think this academic person will be a good fit for this, and perhaps the prosecutor is saying, hey, look, they've been sort of cold and detached, and in fact not paying attention. And I'm not saying that that's what happened here. I'm just saying hypothetically, one side might say, hey, that's actually not the best choice for this.
That's
So
true.
to give that power to the judge already has a whole lot of power, and that's a lot of power to give, because the four-person can truly influence
Mm.
what happens during those deliberations and the positions of the participants.
Well, 100%. If I'm the judge, though, so Judge Sullivan has been around for a long time and he's very respected in Massachusetts. So this is all happening in my county, by the way, and I almost got jury duty, but I didn't. I mean, they call me all the time. It's crazy. I served last year. I wasn't on a trial, but I was there. And they call me again this year. And I said, hey, you're supposed to wait 3 years. So but I was called on I'd served as a juror on a federal trial, though, a civil case, which, as a lawyer, it was great, though. Great
Doesn't usually
experience.
happen. Right.
No, it doesn't usually happen, but it gave me an insight. And I'll tell you what, in that case, the federal judge, also chose the four-person. He chose a primary care physician. It was a woman. And she was very much like this four-person on the Clancy trial. So she was very organized. She took a lot of notes. And when we got into jury deliberation, she was so organized. And she said, okay, we need to go through the evidence. And we decided not. So they try to discourage you in Massachusetts from taking a vote in the beginning. So they want you to go through the evidence first. And she really made us go through all the evidence. And we had all these discussions. And then you'll laugh. You'll love it because you do a lot of civil trial work. This was in around 2008. And it was during the banking crisis. The defendant was a big bank. And it was about promissory estoppel. Did the bank break its promises to the plaintiff by not get by what did they do? She didn't pay, or her they I don't know, they do they foreclosed on her house. Sorry, I'm like blah blah blah. I'm trying to remember. Well, anyway, we got into this huge fight about 4 days in along political lines. Well, the big bank doesn't do the whole thing. So we went out and said we couldn't come up with a verdict. The judge sent us back in, gave us an Allen charge, and said, "Yeah, you got to keep going. You're the best one." So there were two holdouts, and I thought that the foreperson, the primary care physician, was excellent on bringing the two holdouts to our side. And ultimately, believe it or not, we decided in favor of the big bank because the plaintiff lied on her application, and that it was the primary care physician that went through the paperwork and said, "Well, look right here. She lied right here," and passed it around, and then we all agreed in favor of the bank. So that's my experience on the jury.
Yeah, I mean, just goes to show the
Yeah.
influence the foreperson can have. There were two people who
Yes.
were of a different opinion. This
Mm-hmm.
foreperson brought them over to the other side, and
Yeah.
we were ultimately able to reach a unanimous verdict.
Yeah. Yeah, and she was excellent. I mean, she wasn't overbearing, but she was very smart and very persuasive. So I think in my trial the judge was picked the right person. He's not going to pick a lawyer. And by the way, the crazy thing is they knew I taught contract law at Boston College at the time. So, and this was a contract case. It was like, okay, so I'm
Right.
on the jury, but I'm glad they didn't pick me. I thought she was excellent. So, have you served on a jury?
Never. No, I've always been kicked.
Wanted to. Yeah.
Yeah, as a former DA and now criminal defense attorney, and then I do personal injury work too.
Yeah.
There's all types of grounds to say we don't want you.
Well, no, I know it. I know it. Yeah, I got lucky. So obviously, I think it was a numbers game. The number of peremptory challenges I came up, and they all said, "Well, she can be fair and impartial." So I don't know, but I loved it. So, any other thoughts on the case, the trial? What are your thoughts, Eric? That
You
I
know,
did
I
something I
think
didn't
it's
ask.
sure. So, by the book on paper, trials are supposed to be about here's the law, here's the evidence, apply the law to the
Whoops.
evidence. It's sort of mechanical, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And but this trial has shown that that's not all that goes into a trial. Like I said, we're talking about mental health issues, we're talking about women's health issues, and those broader societal issues can really play into what happens during a jury trial. I think this is a really good illustration of that.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, your final prediction?
Final prediction. I think I'm leaning towards hung jury. I think this is so polarizing. It is. We have so folks so adamant on both sides in out in the world. The jury is a microcosm for that. There are going to be those differing perspectives and opinions within that deliberation room. I would not be surprised if it's a hung jury. They cannot decide, and then what happens from there, we'll have to see.
I know. Well, thank you so much, Eric. I really appreciate you being a guest on the show. I'd love to have you back on to discuss some other cases. Do you have any trials coming up in your neck of the woods that we should be following?
We do have a very sizable trial in March regarding allegations that a commercial vehicle severely injured this person who I can't get into too many details,
Yeah.
but their life has changed forever. That's gonna be a big one. And then you can always catch me on different media platforms,
Yes.
Newsmax, Fox News, News Nation, things like that, and on
Yeah.
Instagram at EFAD, E_FAD. Yeah, come give me a shout. Would love to be back
Yeah.
on. Thanks for having me.
Oh, that would be wonderful. I appreciate it. Yes, I've seen you on News Nation. I've seen you on a bunch of stuff, and I was really glad that Steve was able to get you for today. I really appreciate you joining us here on the channel. And by the way, if that comes in March, are you a skier? You're out in Colorado. I hope so.
I am a bad Coloradan in that sense. I'll go to Vail, I'll go to Aspen, I'll drink the drinks and go to the nice restaurants. That's more my lane.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much, and we will hopefully hear from you again soon.
Thank you.
All right. And thank you. 1 second, let me say thank you, Eric, so much. And I'm going to keep going here because I've got another guest coming on in 20 minutes to discuss the trial. So now you're stuck with just me. Wow. So I thought one of the most interesting things was to talk to the reporter about her thoughts on the jury. And she's the one that gave me the insight about the foreperson who took a lot of notes, and the other man who's at, so there's how many women's, what is it? I think 3 men, the rest are women, I believe. So, and then one of the men liked Reddington. He laughed at his jokes, but all it takes is one to hang a jury, unless the rest can convince them otherwise. So it'd be really, really interesting. Oh, what's this pro shot? Red told the journalist today that Lindsay Clancy is scared, of course, is scared awaiting the verdict. I'm confused in the court. Red said Lindsay Clancy doesn't want to live. So, well, what is she afraid of? Okay, in my opinion, I think she, who wants to go to prison for the rest of your life, right? She's confined to a wheelchair. She is on an S watch, so she's on a 1-to-1, but you have more freedoms in a mental institution than you have in prison. I know they'll make accommodations for her, obviously, because she's in a wheelchair. So it'll be different. She's just not going to have the normal cell that we see on the movies, right? Where it's just a cell with a little bathroom and a little toilet, and then they go to the rec room. It would be really interesting. I just thought of a great guest. We should try to interview a former prisoner who could talk about that. Like, what do they do for people who are confined to wheelchairs? I believe it's a separate block altogether. And also, they're going to have some sort of one-on-one because we have a serious S watch here. I mean, who wants to live? I really agree with that. I think that the testimony that we heard, remember when the prosecution brought up the anniversaries of her children, how she was able to socialize in the unit. Everybody really likes her at the unit. So she knows the nurses and the doctors and the staff at Tewksbury. Who wouldn't want to be in an environment like that as opposed to being in prison for the rest of your life? Now, the jury could possibly come back so don't forget, they have to go through all those charges as well. So they could possibly come back with a manslaughter charge, which carries up to 20 years. Well, that's obviously better than life without the possibility of parole. She could come up for parole in a certain amount of time. But I still think that anybody would rather be in a mental hospital. And don't forget, that will come up, her case will come up for review once a year. But as the judge noted I should have asked, I always think of something later. I should have asked Eric what he thought about the fact that here in Massachusetts, we tell the jury exactly what will happen if they have a not guilty by reason of lack of criminal responsibility. They would go into they wouldn't be on the street right away. They would actually go into a place like Tewksbury or Bridgewater, a mental institution, and then it comes up for review, and the court is very involved in it. So and she's not going to get out anytime soon, but could she get out in 5 years? Could she get out in 10 years? It's very possible. So I think that's a really good point, Pro Shot. It's a very good point. So if I'm Lindsay Clancy, I'd be a little bit nervous myself. And let's see. Missy, I know who Missy is. Missy, feel free to jump in if you want. I can send you. So Missy's my sister-in-law, and she came on while I was in New York. She came on the show. She says, I think it's an interesting observation. Jurors are dressed nicely, and you think that might mean a verdict by today. That's quick. Do you think that could be interpreted as guilty? I'd say the opposite, Missy. I would say that would be interpreted as not guilty, because I think that they're looking at her in the wheelchair. It might mean they have some sympathy for her, and it might mean they found reasonable doubt, and they know that the Commonwealth has to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. Normally in trials, if the jury comes back early, it usually means a guilty. But here, I think it's completely different. And that would be my guess. Clearly, if they say they have obviously it's not hung, but dressing nicely is an interesting observation because yes, they know that they're going to be interviewed. The Karen Reed jurors knew that they were going to be interviewed. And remember, what do you remember from that? I know you guys watched that as well. I think I remember they were dressed really nicely that day, right? Do you guys remember? But I think it's interesting, and I'm dying to know. So, an extremely small fraction of people with bipolar disorder commit homicide. The vast majority are never violent toward. Yeah, I agree, and the elevated risk of severe harm is overwhelming directly inward. Yeah, I have a family friend who suffers, and I agree with you on that. The vast majority, and plus, I will tell you, it takes a while to get that medication right. The fact that she tried different medications and she Googled all these, I think that helps the defense incredibly because these combos of medications, they have side effects and they hit people different ways, like different side effects. And like lithium, for example, the side effect is you get you get bloated in your face and your whole body and you gain weight. So a lot of people do not like to be on it. I know that Lamictal is something a lot of people bipolar people prefer to be on. Nobody likes to be on medications, but they prefer it. And that whole rash they were talking about, it's pretty rare. So I think that I don't know. It's interesting. Let's see. I love the chat. You guys are thank you so much for being here today. And then the next guest is Silva Megadician. She'll be coming on in about 15 minutes. She's an attorney out of LA, and I've had her on to discuss the David case. So that's another big case coming up. But the singer D4VD and all the horrible things he did. In my opinion, right now, so in the very beginning, that case was fascinating because poor Celeste was found in his trunk and all this, and it took a long time for them to arrest him, and he was this big music star of fast rise to fame. But now I feel like there's so much evidence against him. It's so black and white. It's not as interesting. And tell me what you think about that. That's why when choosing which trials to follow, I like trials where you can make an argument for both sides, like this one. Karen Reed's another one. Brian Walsh, I felt it got to the point where in the beginning it was interesting. That was a no body case. Those are often interesting, what prosecutors can do to prove a no body case. But ultimately, he made all these Google searches and was, the evidence was overwhelming against Brian Walsh. So let's see. That's right, Lisa. She said she was happy that her children are safe and happy now in heaven. Well, that was when she was with the chaplain, and then I originally thought Lindsay said that, but that was coming from the chaplain. Let's pray for them that they're safe in heaven. So I guess that could be interpreted different ways as well. Smiley, I think it may just be that they are in the deliberation stage and could reach a verdict at any time. Yeah, I know. You're right. So they dressed just in case. That could be. But you would think they'd know if they were way off, they were divided. I don't think after a few hours yesterday they would figure each way. I wouldn't think so either, especially knowing that we have a 4-person who's articulate and is older. I've got to believe that this person would make them, they would, in my opinion, they'd have to go through some of the physical evidence, but also really make a chart on the different experts. They'd have to look at, well, Resnick is renowned, and he said she was in psychosis, and he'd called the voices real command hallucinations. So are they going to buy that from this expert who everybody else agreed he was a renowned expert versus the Commonwealth's experts? And the Commonwealth's experts were good, don't get me wrong, but it seemed like Resnick was the best around. So, do you think there's a connection between the Karen Reed cult outside the courthouse and these pink shirt ladies? That's a really good question. Karen Reed followers, they were wearing a lot of pink, and I don't know. I was wondering that myself. The pink is typically a girly color, right? So I'm not sure why they chose pink, but they are all for the defendant in this case. So it's very possible. There's a little bit of spillover there, but I do not know. Another question. Do you think one day of deliberation for each week of that's a really good one. We had what, 4 weeks, 4 days? You know what? That actually makes the most sense to me of all. So yeah, I've predicted that this will go into at least next Wednesday. But yeah, that's a good way of looking at 1 day for each week of the trial. I wonder if there's statistics about that. I mean, I guess just it's got to be case by case, because some of these big M trials, the prosecution has such overwhelming evidence. For example, the David case, which unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, will not be televised. So, but the evidence is so overwhelming. I can't imagine, unless he is an amazing defense attorney out in LA. So unless they come up with some alternative theory, maybe somebody else set him up. So something like that. But I haven't seen anything yet, but who knows? So this question, what would we actually know about the foreperson being articulate? Okay. I know that. Well, at least I think I know that, because I spoke with, last night I did the Boston NBC show, and one of their reporters was in there every day. And I've known her for a while. She was also in there every day for the Karen Reed trial. So when I was there last night off camera, we talked about the jury. And I wasn't in court, so I was torn. Court isn't very far from where I live, but I also wanted to do a live stream, so it's really hard to be in court and do the live stream. Like, if I could clone myself, I would have done it. So I made the decision to be here with you guys and live stream instead of going in. But what I did lose out on was looking at the jury, who's taking notes. So I should have done that. But anyway, hindsight's 2020. But this reporter is wonderful, and I trust her. So she said that the foreperson was older, in her 70s, and took very articulate notes. When a witness was testifying, whether it was for the Commonwealth or for the defense, she leaned forward, took notes, really listened like she was an active listener, and would even nod alongside with the witness. She didn't tell me which side, but I think maybe all the witnesses. So she was so articulate and organized, and that's who we have for a foreperson. So that's how I actually know that she's, I guess I shouldn't say articulate, I should say organized. And the reporter thought she might have been, someone who was academic. So that's my inside information. That makes a good foreperson, I think, in my opinion. She's very attentive. That's the word. Yes, attentive. Yes, so she's attentive. I apologize if my words are a little bumbled. This has been a lot. I actually slept the first time ever. I slept in today because we didn't have court at 9. I have to get the stream up, but you will like Silva too. She's excellent. So make sure you come up with some good questions for her. She's very knowledgeable. She's just like Eric. She's an attorney. She's on News Nation and all those other things as well. But she's an attorney out in LA. So ask some questions about maybe what they do differently in California and what she thinks. I know she's been following this case. And yes, here's another thing. Maui, good morning, Maui. Good to see you as always. Was it true a few jurors were crying during the Commonwealth's closing? I didn't ask her that. I'm not sure. I don't know. I wish I could call her up and ask her. Does anybody else know? Have you seen any reports saying that the jurors were crying. She didn't mention that to me last night. You think she would have. So this reporter, who actually was able to predict the Karen Reed trial, also thought it would be a hung jury. Yes, good morning. Good morning, Maui. And I think, Maui, you're up in Canada, right? Um, Smiley in New England. You make me smile every time I Smiley. Definitely agree, Margaret. Unlike the Reed case where he took no notes, yeah, I know, and said he didn't need to hear anything after the first day. I was surprised. Yeah. So when I was a juror in federal court, the judge chose someone who was a very attentive listener and took a lot of notes. And she turned out to be an excellent juror, and she was a primary care doctor. So yeah, I think it makes a difference. And I think what Eric said was very interesting, because a four-person is a leader, and they can really influence what jurors are thinking, especially if you have holdouts. Because the four-person, when I was a juror back in federal court, did have some sway over we had two holdouts. And I thought, she did have some sway there. It was such an interesting experience to be on that jury. Hey, good after. Oh, is it afternoon already? I'm saying morning. It's afternoon. Gosh, good afternoon. Yes. Question. Do you think Lindsay Clancy's loud sobbing in court was real? I think it was fake and more for herself than her kids. I actually do think it was real. In my opinion, like the way she was shaking and crying. And when you say more for herself, possibly you could interpret it that way, because she's lost everything. She's lost her husband, who I think she really loved. He's now remarried. And here she is confined to a wheelchair. It's very possible you could interpret it that way. And a juror can interpret it both ways too. Yeah, I don't know. But that's the way. Hey, good afternoon from Oklahoma. Nice to see you in the chat today. I'm thrilled we have so many people interested, and I'm curious. I'd love to hear what people from all over the country think about this. And I know different states handle it differently. Yeah, Michelle, you think it looked fake. And hey, a lot, again, that's the jury is going to they're going to be asking those same questions. Was it real? Was it contrived? Do you think she really heard those voices? Do you think she really knew what she was doing? Did she know right from wrong? They're going to be saying, what do you think about that mortal sin question? They're going to be talking about all that stuff. So, yeah, it's just, yeah. Yeah, I think the differences of opinion are really interesting, because in this chat, a lot of you think that she's guilty. You feel for the kids. And I've seen that in other chats as well, but the polls don't necessarily reflect it. It's really interesting. So I don't know. I think that there are, and again, I want everybody to be open-minded. That's what I really like about the chat. People are very open-minded, and I've tried to create a space where for those of you who might be joining us for the first time, I am a former prosecutor and a trial lawyer. And there's Silva. I see her. I've been talking about you, Silva. So Silva, I'm going to just bring you right in. I'm so happy to see Silva. She's such a great person. So I'm going to add her to the stage.
Hi.
Hey, Silva. Oh, I love your hair.
Oh, thank you so much. I love yours too. You look beautiful per usual.
Well, I was so tired. I slept in today, and then I took a shower, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, I got to get ready. So the easiest thing, put my hair up in a bun.
Well, it takes very little for you. You look gorgeous. And trust me, with everything going on, I've been in court all week, but this Lindsay Clancy case, oh my gosh, Margaret, there's just so much to unpack, and it's insane, the developments.
Oh, I know. And I've got to introduce you, by the way, with Lindsay Clancy. We've got quite a nice audience in here now. So it's awesome. We have a number of people Yes. So everybody, this is one of my favorites, Silva Megadichian, and she's an LA attorney, hotshot LA attorney out there.
Oh.
And no, seriously, I love hearing, she's on a lot of the talk shows as well. And I really love discussing cases with Silva. We've discussed the David case and several others, but it's such a pleasure to have you on my show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, Margaret, thank you. And you're doing such great work, and hi to your viewers. And let's
Yeah.
unpack, Margaret.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
We've talked about mental health so much together, and
Yeah,
wow,
we did.
there's just so much. And it's just, it's incredible what there is to unpack here.
I know. So, I want to start out with California. What
Yeah.
do you guys do with an insanity case like this? So here in Massachusetts, there's a burden shifting that goes on. Lindsay is presumed sane when she steps into the
Yeah.
courtroom, but then all the defense has to do is raise some evidence that she was insane at the time, not sane, that she lacked criminal responsibility. And it doesn't have to be much. It can be suggested in cross-examination. Then the burden shifts entirely to the prosecution to prove that Lindsay was sane beyond a reasonable doubt at the time the crimes were committed. What do you do in California?
It's very similar, Margaret. Absolutely.
Okay.
Not guilty by reason of insanity is a very, very difficult bar. We don't get it often. And I think people sometimes think, regardless of the state, that it's kind of like an excuse and an easy way to get out of a case. And it absolutely is not. The burden is very high. And to show that the person at the time of the incident did not know right from wrong, was in the throes of that psychosis, it's incredibly rare to even get that verdict. So it's very similar to Massachusetts. Once the client is deemed to be not guilty by means of insanity, they are in a mental institution until they are deemed to be, again, not under that mental illness state. It's incredibly difficult for a client to get out of that mental institution. They're very careful. And the reason being is so deep, right? Because if the person is deemed to be able to re-go into society, and God forbid there's another murder that is committed, everyone involved within that declaration of being sane, the microscope is on them. The media doesn't let go. And we see that a lot, Margaret, even with our recent change of district attorneys here in LA. We had a very much a progressive district attorney in George Gascon, and he lost an election to a very pro-sentencing, pro-jail, pro-strike, pro-death penalty DA and Nathan Hoffman. So people sometimes think, oh, LA is so liberal. I always tell people, look, first of all, California is the home of three strikes. And number two, right now, we're dealing with really hefty sentencing, not much sympathy for mental health issues, and a real microscope into recidivism. So it is quite similar and a very difficult bar.
Yeah, definitely. And then the whole death penalty thing in California, technically it's on the books, right? But they don't use it.
Right. Right now, there's still that moratorium. The DA has stated that he's being very careful on who he wants to give the death penalty for. He said it would only be for extreme circumstances. Interestingly, we haven't had a death penalty case yet, but we do know for sure David's case is being considered as a death case. And your viewers might be surprised. There are actually rumors that Nick Reiner, the young man that killed his parents, allegedly, is being considered as a death penalty case. So it'll be really interesting to see. I think these two cases will say a lot to see where LA and California is going for death penalty cases. I think David, Margaret, you and I have talked about it so much. I think that case, I would be actually very surprised if it's not deemed a death penalty case.
Yeah, me too. Hey, can you do us all a favor and try to get them to televise those two cases for us? Since you're out there?
It's really difficult to get judges to agree, and also clients too. A lot of clients do want the transparency, but again, We'll see. Again, if Nick Reiner is able to get Alan Jackson, if he's able to get that funding from his what's going on in
Oh,
the
the trust.
exactly. I wonder if Alan Jackson will push for it being televised. We know how great he is on TV when it happened
Oh,
to
yeah.
Karen Reed, but again, you need everyone to agree. And considering we are the Hollywood state,
Yeah.
we drag our heels when it comes to some of the televised trials. Even though we had OJ that was televised, I think
Oh,
the
that's right.
judicial
You did.
right and the judicial system has learned how that can be that microscope is very difficult.
Yeah. New York State is another state that cameras are not allowed in the courtroom, and we have some
Yeah.
big trials possibly Mangione,
Yeah.
and we weren't able to. Obviously, what's the one? There was several in New York.
Like
Obviously,
Weinstein. Yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
exactly. I don't know why my mind is like, woo, Lindsay
Yeah.
Clancy, but yeah.
It's Margaret, we'll talk about that another time
Yeah,
too.
yeah, absolutely.
I love cameras in the courtroom for transparency, but it's very difficult for a client and the amount of attention they get and the amount of scrutiny. I personally do not like my trials being televised. There's enough pressure, no sleep, and we all know too people are really, really harsh on female attorneys, whether they're
Yeah.
prosecutors or defense attorneys. If our
Mhm.
hair is out of place, or we look disheveled, or we gain weight during trial, or we lose weight during trial. I mean, I hear it from jurors. I can only imagine people and how they would react.
Yeah.
So it's you would think again we would be ready for it in LA. Even me who loves the media, I would be really careful agreeing to it.
Yeah, yeah. So back to Lindsay Clancy.
Yes.
I don't know if you've been some of the latest things, and I'll keep
Yes.
just update you on this. This morning,
Yes.
did you find the jury came in with a question. It wasn't
Yeah.
made public, but they basically wanted to see the knife and the prescription pill bottles.
Yeah.
So that the reason they weren't able to see those, they weren't in the deliberation room because the knife is considered dangerous. If they get in a big argument, they could start stabbing themselves. That would be a legal thriller right there.
Yeah.
Who committed the murder in the jury deliberation box? But what do you think tell me what is your vibe, or what do you think
Yeah.
about this jury? And I have a little insight that I just share with you. Last night I was on a show, an NBC show in Boston, and the reporter is very astute. We're friends. And she said that the foreperson is in her 70s and very organized and attentive listener and took a lot of notes. So the judge chose her to be foreperson. There's more women than men. I think there's only 3 men on the jury. One of those male jurors was laughing a lot along with Reddington's jokes. So that's what I've gotten snippets of. And they also came to court very well dressed today. So people are. What are your thoughts? So what are your thoughts on that?
Margaret, I'll tell you, it's also a Friday, and these jurors have been incredibly patient. But we all know as trial attorneys, the death knell is a Friday. And what I mean by that is we know there is a deadline. No juror wants to come back on a Monday. I have a very strong feeling before end of day Eastern time. I think the jury's going to want to come back. I do think, look, my viewers on my channel, Court TV, and yours, I feel like people are really, it's 50 and 50. 50% believe that she absolutely was insane at the time. And the other half absolutely believe that she was calculating and really was in her right mind and wanted to get rid of her children. Now, the first thought in my mind that they wanted the knife and the pill bottles, I believe that there are either one or more jurors who want to see whether there was an actual legitimate suicide attempt by Lindsay Clancy. What's ironic is the DAs made their opening statement and really 1 week of testimony really talking about how Lindsay didn't really try to kill herself, that it was all a ruse. Now, that kind of changed in the closing argument. But we know from jury trials, you and I, Margaret, that jurors will sometimes latch onto a theory even though the prosecutor moved on from the theory, the juror might latch onto it. They might say, look, maybe she didn't really want to kill herself and she killed her kids and wasn't really serious about ending her life. It was all part of a ruse. Let's see if the knife really could have penetrated her wrists. Was this legitimate or was this fake? And I think the pill bottles might be the same thing. There might be a juror or more who believe, wait a second, did she not take the needed medication? And I've seen that from a lot of viewer comments. Like, but Silva, she didn't take all of the prescribed medication. Maybe she wouldn't have flipped out if she just listened to the doctors. I really believe, and I've been wrong before, because we never know. This is why the system is so private when it comes to jurors. We don't know who's selected, where they come from, whether they have mental health in their family. We don't know where they're coming from. But the first thought in my mind, Margaret, was they want to see if it was a legit suicide attempt by seeing and analyzing the knife. Was it a dull knife? Was it a sharp knife? Was it a big knife?
I'd like to have known
penetrated? Yeah. And then the second thing is, did she not pay attention to her pill bottles? I also thought, were there warnings on the pill bottles? Or do they want to see exactly what was found? Why the investigators didn't fully investigate? There could be a lot. So I don't think it's positive or negative. I do think there are jurors that want to dot their I's and cross their T's in making their determination.
Yeah, I think you've raised some great points there. 100%. I wondered, I would have liked to have had an investigator testify about the knife. Like I talked about this before. Some of my kitchen knives are very strong when I first get them. I love to cook, and now they're dull. So was that knife sharp or dull? Was it harder for her to try to cut herself? So we didn't have any testimony like that.
Here's the thing. I think the prosecution changed course because they were gauging the jury. It was a sharp 180, in my opinion. I was actually quite surprised. The first time we saw empathy in any capacity, and a lot of my viewers gave me a hard time that prosecutors shouldn't be empathetic. This is a different case. Empathy is very important. You have both sides of the family. Remember, they lost their grandchildren and their children. You had husband, you had maternal parents, paternal grandparents, all of them supporting Lindsay, and you had 3 souls that left this earth. There has to be a sense of compassion from the DA, and the only time they showed it, in my opinion, was in their clothes, and they shifted. But it doesn't necessarily mean, Margaret, that the jury shifted. There could have been themes and theories that they were like, wait a second, this is important. And I know we'll get to this, Margaret, but I have to say, I found one aspect of the DA. I think they did a very good job when she said, I like their argument about right or wrong. If Lindsay Clancy did not know right or wrong, why did she avoid telling the mandatory reporters that she was thinking of killing her children?
Yeah.
That cry for help would have gotten her in an institution and away from the children. Most likely. She was really afraid of family services taking her kids.
Yeah.
But we all know, though, Patrick would have had full custody of the children. I think that's something that's really going to linger in the jurors' minds.
Yeah. And I as a mother, I get that. And hindsight is 2020 because, Patrick and Lindsay's mother knew that she was having these thoughts. She shared that with them. They could have committed her. And it's actually under Massachusetts law. I've seen somebody committed, a very close family friend, and the police do help you here. I'm in the same county, so it's the same pretty much the same training, where they do a really good job when it comes to committing somebody. Yeah. But maybe Patrick and the mother just didn't realize that. They probably thought there's no way she would ever really harm her children. She's a loving mother. Maybe they just didn't buy into it. So I think they are going to consider that. They're going to consider the fact that Lindsay was a nurse and she wasn't completely honest with her providers. Maybe she should have been more honest, and she should have stayed in Mclean longer. If she's really hearing voices that, in her words, were so loud that she thought other people could hear them, you've really got to go get help. And I think hopefully that will resonate with people across the country watching the trial.
Margaret, beautifully said. And this is the problem why the jury is taking so long. You have a put together, intelligent, beautiful nurse, young, with a wonderful family, and by all accounts, a doting, wonderful, beautiful mom. You also have, the husband, right? Who I wish that there was a little bit more of an investigation as to his role. We saw this with Andrea Yates too. When your wife is in the throes of postpartum depression before it even goes to psychosis, and you're turning out child after child after child, is there a duty also? What was the involvement? A lot of my viewers brought up the Patrick Clancy angle, not just on TikTok, but
Oh, God.
a lot of people. And I understand why Reddington did not focus anything on Patrick, because again, when you're going for not guilty by reasons of insanity, there is an assumption of guilt, right? There's an assumption that she had done it. But again, there were certain pieces of evidence that came out that really made me wonder what's the true story. The fact that after her suicide event, when she threw herself out the window, there's no contradiction. She couldn't talk. She was not in a state to talk. So when Patrick testified that he was told that the children were in the house, my alarm bells went up. How was she able to talk in that state? So
Yeah.
there were some interesting holes.
Yeah, the defense brought that up. But
Yeah.
On the flip side, how did he know to immediately go to the basement?
There were a lot of issues, right, Margaret?
Yeah.
And I think an astute jury is going to think that too. And I want to be clear. I spoke to my best friend who's an attorney. We were just talking about, and again, California, New York, Europe, everyone is talking about this.
I know.
We were talking today about these are regular people. They're not sequestered. They have their cell phones. I cannot imagine a jury in this day of age not, even though they're admonished not to, I can't imagine them not looking at their phones. I just can't.
And I wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
Well, maybe it's just because I'm a lawyer.
Look, we wouldn't do it because we know, I'm like, everything can be tracked. I'm super careful. It's not worth my bar card. But
there you go.
But jurors they're in a bubble, but they're not on an island away from communication. And I think the DA and the defense attorney, I think they took that into account. I thought both closes, by the way, were brilliant. I really did. I thought both did what they had to do for their respective side.
Right. No, I agree. What did you think of the opening statements and the closing arguments yesterday? What were your thoughts? We had a Reddington style, and then we had the prosecution who made a shift.
Look, I am also a fan of Mr. Reddington. He is, lawyers know a Mr. Reddington, the 75-year-old cool man who practices not because he has to, because he wants to, because his job gives him purpose, and the compassionate fighter, the person, and there are men and women who do this, who hold the hand of their client, who fight for their client, who believe in their client now, and who get away with a lot of things because of how long they've been practicing.
Yeah.
Mr. Reddington putting out the quarters. Now, the judge made the right call to snap at Mr. Reddington for addressing the DA. In LA or wherever I've practiced, that is a huge no-no. It is seen as it's just not proper. You argue to the jury. It is not you against the DA, even though it is in the courtroom, but it's incredibly unprofessional and unethical to come at them like that. Judges don't like that. So the judge did the right thing. But what I loved about Mr. Reddington, old school, no notes, no use of technology. He brought out the picture boards. Everything was by memory. Nothing. There was no real chronology. He does not believe in chronology. He believed in emotional impact. He believed in really trying to say, these are the weaknesses in the prosecutor's case. And he did it in a very conversational manner. What I loved was the simplicity. The picture of Lindsay's family before, the picture of after, and the middle is what is most important. And the only thing that adequately explains the middle is an extreme event, which is psychosis.
Right.
There is
Like what
something
loving mother could do this to their child? Yeah, go ahead, children.
and the DA. I thought she was soft. I think no one can deny the shift of the tonality. She definitely was softer. I think she realized someone must have told both of them it's too much. I think Reddington at points was very bullyish, and I think the DAs were consistently, the look I think was a little much for what the circumstances were. We've all done trials. I've had brilliant prosecutors, and it kills me because I'm like, oh, do they have to do it that way? Where they are able to really talk to the jury in a passionate, empathetic, and compassionate way when there is this level of loss, especially when children are involved. And I think they're a little bit mute to that until the close. I really did think both of them, with their relative styles, were very well. They did what they had to do. I like that, both of them. Oh, I see Heartstar. He said Red's, or whether Heartstar said Red's closing was very underwhelming. I'm going to admit something to you, Margaret, too. I actually agree. It wasn't his normal antics. I don't want to say antics because they're not antics. It wasn't his normal bombastic style. And I thought the arguments weren't the bombastic style, but I still thought it was very well done. It was highlighting what needed to be highlighted. I thought it was beautiful. And I've seen a lot of closing arguments, Margaret. I know you have too, where defense attorneys focus on their notes and the argument goes away, or focus on technology and it doesn't hit the jury, or focus how the DA did not meet their burden, but they forget their great points. I thought Red did what he needed to do. And honestly, Margaret, I thought the prosecutor did what she needed to do. And you're a former prosecutor. What do you think? I'm dying to hear your thought.
Well, I think so after Reddington, and I thought I liked Reddington. I thought, if I'm being critical, I would have hammered more on reasonable doubt, over and over and over. If you can't decide which expert to believe, reasonable doubt, over and over and over. But it was insinuated, right? I loved, and I'll get to the prosecutor, but I loved it when Reddington talked about his expert, Dr. Resnick, so renowned, called him doctor. And then he didn't name the other experts, like, oh yeah, except for Mac. He's like, Mac. It's kind of funny to me that Dr. Mac does have a name like Mac. It's like, sounded like, Mac. I wouldn't even bother with him. You probably won't. And then
Margaret, not to interrupt you, but I was laughing every time he referred to Mac as Mac and not Dr. Mac. It was brilliant, because psychologically we stopped viewing him as Dr. Mac and just Mac.
Brilliant. Yeah, just Mac. And then when it came to Sathoff, who we heard the day before the closing arguments, he's like, and the guy that testified yesterday, just not like the doctor. Oh, the guy that testified yesterday, whatever his name was, I loved that. I was like, oh my God. Some people were turned off by that in my chat, but now moving to the prosecution. I thought after Reddington's flamboyancy, I thought she came out, I liked her style. She came out kind of calm and collected and say, this is what happened. And I liked how she picked up the quarters and put them in her pocket. I thought that was excellent. And she methodically went through the evidence and their experts and who to believe. And I thought that was excellent. And then I thought at the end, it was very, it hit home with me when she had that talked about those children that were left like toys on the floor of the basement, on the basement floor, and then she just left them there. She didn't take them, put them in the beds or anything. She just left them there. And I thought that was just it just really made me think about those victims. And that's what she had to do. It was a great wrap up. I'm surprised she didn't. So the only one that raised, unless I didn't see it because of the camera angle, but I thought the only one that really raised the picture of the children and the family was Reddington. I don't think she did that, right?
I think look, here's the other issue. 1 hour. I thought that was crazy that the judge, now we know from studies that the jurors tune out after an hour. We know that. But for a case like this, I think 1 hour was an impossible amount to wrap everything that they needed to wrap. I will say, I'm gonna disagree a little bit with you, Margaret, on one thing.
Oh, sure.
I
love that.
The argument of
Here, let's
the
put us back
children
up.
not being in the bed. I think actually a discerning juror who understands psychosis might actually point out, when you're in the throes of psychosis and you're murdering your children, to have the empathy and thought to put them nicely in a bed would really go to having her mind back, that I did this horrible thing and I want to put them comfortably in a bed. My God, what have I done? Instead, she flings herself out of a window. I think people in that juror room, that was the first thing I thought. If she's in the throes of psychosis, why would she want to take care of the children? Her thought is, I want these kids in heaven. I want them taken care of in heaven, and I want to be with them, and I'm going to kill myself because the voice told me the only way to keep them safe is to kill them and kill yourself. But it could go both ways. It depends how discerning that jury is. That part of the argument was interesting to me. The brilliance of her argument, for sure, because the whole purpose of that argument is, did she know right from wrong?
Yeah. And did she have rational thought?
And I took a step back after her close because I was like, dang, that was powerful.
It was.
How could... There were certain, but look, I've also seen psychosis. I've told people, and it's true as a public defender here in LA, there were times where 75% of my clients had really bad mental illness. And I'll tell you, I've seen clients from a vegetative state to a normal state, back to a vegetative state.
Yep.
Psychosis. Oh, I'll tell you, Margaret, there's one other issue I did not like about the prosecutor's statement. I'm dying to hear your thought on this. I did not like that she brought up that Lindsay was blessed to have good insurance to get doctors.
Okay,
That bothered me.
Yeah, because we normally can't talk about insurance at all. Yeah, I know. In Massachusetts, we have we have state insurance here. We were one of the first. So our system is I think our medical system is very good here in Massachusetts for the most part compared to the rest of the country. I haven't. Basically, she was trying to say, I think she was going after possible members of the jury who are similar to some of what I saw in the chat here on this channel. People were upset with Lindsay for not doing more to make herself, I shouldn't say better, to help herself, to get medications that actually work. Or if she's hearing these voices, she thinks she's afraid she's going to harm her children. You're a nurse, so commit yourself to Mclean Hospital. So I think that was her reasoning was, here's a woman that had access to some of the best medical care providers and some of the best hospitals. The fact she got into Mclean, it's hard to get into Mclean, by the way. But, so therefore she didn't do enough she basically saying that she really needed to be doing more to help herself to avert this tragedy of what ultimately happened. So I think that was the reasoning. I didn't mind it, seeing that people were blaming. She's hoping that somebody in the jury will be blaming Lindsay and come back with a guilty.
I wish that Reddington, I thought one piece of evidence that the defense blew me away when researching this case, even before trial. I wish, and he touched on it. He showed all of the medication, 3 months, 14 medications. But I also wish he had a chart, which he could have held, old school, all of the times chronologically that she tried to get help. Because when you see the list, and one of the newspapers, online papers, had listed, it was insane how many times this woman, between therapy appointments, suicide hotline, nonstop therapy calls, nonstop hospital calls. I mean, she went nuts trying to get adequate help. And I think that would have toned down the prosecutor's incredible pinpoint argument that she didn't do enough for self care. If there's one thing I think that I would want everyone to know when it comes to, people who are privileged versus people who are not privileged in society, when it comes to mental health, what I've seen as a public defender and a private attorney is there's just equally, the system just does not take care adequately of patients. Whether you are a multimillionaire, as we saw in the Reiner situation, or you are living on the street, we have not solved the mental health crisis. I have a multi-millionaire client, Margaret, who has been dealing with her brother's mental illness, schizophrenia, bipolar disease, since he was born with it, since he was 5 years old. They can't beg anybody to take him in. And she is scared stiff of what he will or will not do. And there's nothing we can do. He gets committed, released, committed, released, committed, released. No mandatory medication. We are all in the same boat when it comes to not solving this crisis or having adequate solutions. And in California, it's horrible because we don't have enough mental health providers versus a huge population of those in need. And that's what breaks me. And and if I was a defense attorney, I just would have ended in this case. If I were Reddington is please don't get me wrong, he's amazing. There's one little thing I would have ended with. What would have happened if there was proper care? If medication wasn't thrown at her as much as it was, what if there was an alternative to that with proper care? Would this have happened? And I think that says something.
It does. The only thing I would say is having the family friend who's, bipolar diagnosis and, severe in and out of the hospitals, but doing well now. So it took a long time to get her where she is, and a lot of hospitalizations, but it did take a lot of experimenting with medication, and even with the ETC, the electric shock therapy, which really, really ended up helping. So, but I felt that so when I watched Lindsay's providers testifying, I thought that they really did try. They tried different medications. She didn't like some of the side effects. And that's an issue that my family friend had as well, because what happens a lot of times is they're Googling all the possible side effects and they hyper focus, partly because of the mental illness, on certain side effects. Oh, I'm not going to take that. I'm not going to take that. And some do have side effects, like lithium had quite a, I felt, this was a beautiful young woman, and, lithium made her really appear bloated, and she gained weight. And so, but it's very effective for treating bipolar, but she won't beyond that. So but I also wonder, and this is a crazy question, but the client that you have who has schizophrenia and bipolar, and since there are 5, that's a really, really tough combination. So, when they took away the institutions, I mean, I wish that there was something where they could live and function, not like the old, Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest movie type of place, but someplace really nice that could be funded, where they could have like a really nice outdoor space, activities. I think some people would benefit from that. I don't know.
Margaret, look, you and I both have very direct experiences with this. I have
Mm-hmm.
always said in 20 years, if we could solve this crisis, crime would be
Oof.
so low. But you're absolutely correct. We California does not like involuntary treatment and mandatory,
Mm-hmm.
right? But there is a point where there's a consensual aspect that just doesn't work when it comes to the throes of mental illness. There has to be a way, but what we critically need more of, and I tell all young people that are coming into the workforce, if they're looking for jobs that won't be replaced by AI, there is
Oh yeah.
such a need for psychiatrists,
Oh
such a
yes.
need for psychologists. We don't have enough people to take care of the sheer numbers. We just don't have it. And if we can put investment into these genres, which we know can help countless people. And Margaret, I think I talked to you about this before. What frustrated me as a public defender is my job changed, right? In law school, we are trained to
Yeah.
be trial attorneys, defense attorneys. We are not trained to be therapists, psychologists, and psychiatrists. And there also has to be, when you're becoming a criminal defense attorney, we need consistent, hardcore training on proper ways to handle mental health,
Yeah.
including police officers.
Oh yeah. Here
We
in
need to
Massachusetts,
adapt.
they were I helped I'm so close with my family friend
Yeah.
that they had to use the police for her own sake
Yeah.
multiple times. And the police here were so well trained. They were amazing. I have to say they were amazing, and I
Yeah.
think they saved her life. I really do. I
Look,
really do.
we also have the community policing too that's been really good and effective. It just I just wish families had a way to just to have that help. But again, we're not going to solve it tomorrow, but
No.
we can have funding and policies to get us to a place where we have safety nets for family. I love what Lisa Carney, your viewer, wrote.
Yeah.
Families need proper education, and NAMI is an amazing organization. We need this is where the community in every capacity, by together tackling this, we can actually get somewhere where criminal recidivism can be solved through proper management. And I just think in a case like Lindsay Clancy, there is no doubt that this woman consistently was crying for help. And what sat with me is two suicide hotlines. Wow.
Mhm.
Saying
Oh,
that,
I know.
I mean, that crushed me. Eh, I'm going to ask you something, Margaret, too,
Yeah.
that kind of struck me. And I don't want your viewers to be upset with me, but I need to also ask you this and the viewers. What kind of struck me, and again, I believe in genderless representation and genderless experts. In other words, when it comes to criminal defense, we all are judged by what we do, not by our gender. But I was taken aback by all of the expert witnesses from both the prosecution and Red. They were all male, and they were all males talking about postpartum depression that's only found in women. I
Yeah.
just wish there was one female expert perspective because who treated Lindsay, who actively treated Lindsay, they were all women, right? And then
Yes.
our experts were all men. I just wish there was one female expert in the community, postpartum expert, which they exist in the United States, that could have talked about that female perspective, hormonal imbalances, whether it's from the DA side or the defense side. I think there was an opportunity missed, especially when you have 9 female jurors in
Big
your
time.
panel. That's
Yeah.
what do you think, Margaret? I'm dying to
I
hear your
agree.
point.
Yeah, I agree 100%. So either side, they should have thought about that. And I always thought that maybe these female attorneys or DAs were picked because they were female specifically and were dealing with postpartum issues and a female defendant. But 100%, I even think that I think the defense, I'm surprised that Reddington, the veteran that he is, didn't think of that and have hire someone. Like, I think he thought that, well, he has the renowned Dr. Resnick in his pocket. Then he had Zeidel, who was there from day one, both excellent. But it would have, I think he would have, it would have benefited him to have a female expert to talk about postpartum, because he made such a big deal with the Commonwealth experts not being versed in postpartum. And you know what? I think he was right. I felt that they weren't that, they were experts in the field, but they really weren't very well versed in postpartum. The Commonwealth should have thought of that, I think, and gotten a woman who was versed in and I even had some, like Paige Bellingham would have been excellent. She was she was on my show. I had Dr. Kumi on my show as well, who was very
amazing.
Versed. So they could have hired either one of those.
And think witnesses. Of it, Margaret. Think of it as a prosecutor, brilliant mind that you have. Imagine if the DA, right? You do. Yeah. Imagine if the Commonwealth, right? After that, because Reddington did a beautiful job showing how Lindsay was bullied by these 3 psychiatrists that came to her while she's in the wheelchair being treated in the mental health facility that she's currently at. They came and they asked her questions and no breaks. And she was cooperative and kind to them. But she was exhausted in her wheelchair being questioned relentlessly by these 3 experts for multiple days and multiple hours. Imagine if a female expert was hired by the prosecution with the compassion and empathy, but testified that she was not in the throes of psychosis. Do you think subliminally and psychologically the jurors would have maybe held that testimony to a higher level as a female expert psychiatrist who saw Lindsay, who was a little bit more empathetic to her position, but came out with the same conclusion? I think that would have been far more effective for the prosecutorial side. I think
100%.
I think both sides miss an opportunity, because if there's one thing that as women we've dealt with is that sometimes medical treatment is blind to concerns of women. Oh, you have pain? Oh, just go to a therapist. It's psychological. I mean, I had a cousin who was denied adequate treatment. She knew something was wrong. Doctors kept on saying it's in her head. She died of advanced cancer because nobody put it together. And I think, look, medicine is changing. Thankfully, it's become much more appropriate because we understand these phantom illnesses and that cancer can affect everybody regardless of age. But we have to be attuned, especially when you have a 70-year-old floor person, the juror that seems like they are the foreperson here, right?
Yeah.
She probably understands a lot about this. So I think it's a missed opportunity. But again, my favorite position is being a quarterback, right? Where we analyze this and we're not in there. But
I know
it was a missed opportunity for sure.
You know what's really interesting, and I was, as you have a show, and please tell tell the chat. We have a nice chat in here. What about the name of your show so they can follow you as well?
Oh, thank you so much, Margaret. It's called The Law Lounge with Silva. And, I wish I had more time to put more content in because I'm in court every single day. I actually recorded yesterday, Margaret. I was in my car outside of Pasadena Courthouse on a multi-strike defendant, but I was like, I gotta talk about the clothes.
Oh my gosh, I know. Well, Silva, I had to. So my daughter gave birth to. My oldest daughter gave birth to twins, and
oh my gosh, congratulations!
I know, I was so happy. So it was basic. So I knew they came early, first of all, but then I had to I rented a place in New York for a month. So she's in New York City. I did July 20th to August 20th. Of course, what hits during this big trial, which is, I'm like, oh my gosh. So I was live streaming from this apartment that I rented, but I brought all my equipment with me on the train, my lights, everything. And it worked out, but it was exhausting because I'd be live streaming or then on a show, then I have to run and help her with the twins. And she really needed help. So I did go and help every day and I'd stay late. And oh my God, it was exhausting.
How do these influencers do it when they're on cam? I'm like, how do they have time? And how does their hair always look good?
I
Right?
know. I
Like,
know. I
don't
know.
people have bad hair days? Anyway, but
Well,
no,
I had
it's,
plenty of
yeah.
bad hair days, but at this point, hey, I'm a grandmother.
Well, congratulations. You are a
Thank you.
beautiful
Thank you.
grandmother. But look,
Oh,
Margaret, look what Louise wrote. I am bothered with three male psychs finding
yeah.
her responsible. I do think, again, it is,
Yeah.
it was a huge red flag for me, especially with a female jury and a female defendant. They could have done a little bit better. And let's not forget, Margaret, Reddington is old school. And Reddington absolutely maybe not have seen the gender issues, but I tell you what got my heart was when Lindsay grabbed his hand before and after his close. That
Oh,
compassion,
I didn't
empathy.
notice that.
Oh, it was beautiful. A lot of the astute TikTokers in my fan base put a little bit of that note. And I think that as attorneys, it's so important to see our belief in our clients and the humane and human aspect of what we do. I thought that
Yeah.
was really beautiful.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, I did not pick up on that. But um, I'm trying to think if there's, what did you think about the mortal sin thing
Uh,
as a
I don't like
lawyer?
it. That's I hate to say, and I'd love to hear your side on this as a former prosecutor. I thought it was a low blow because we all are religious, right? We all believe, well, again, I mean this in kind of a generalization, right? We know that for people who are religious, we know that there are moral sins, right? The
Yep.
problem is in a courtroom, it's not about that. It's about legal. And I
Mm-hmm.
think the prosecutors, it was a little bit below the belt. I think they were trying to get an easy win by saying this is against the commandments of murder. She's a Catholic, the family's Catholic. This is a sin. Doesn't belong in a courtroom.
Mm-hmm.
There's no place in jury instructions that state if you believe this is a sin, that you should find her guilty. It was a low blow because you don't want that lingering in a juror's minds. You just want this about legal standards and evidence and what the judge tells you to do. I didn't like it, but I will say this as a corollary, Margaret. I don't remember the doctor's name, but when the
I think it was
doctor,
Sathoff. I can't remember which one either, or maybe it wasn't Sathoff. It was Heilbrunn. Was it Heil? I think it was
it
Heilbrunn.
might be. I thought he was very innocent. I thought he brought
Yeah.
it up not as something subliminal for the jury. I thought he just brought it up as he was trying to explain what she had told him. So the judge snapping at him, I thought was a little bit not justified. I did not find an issue to that. I did find an issue to the prosecutor bringing it up. It doesn't
Yeah.
belong in the courtroom. She knows better. These are very
Yeah.
astute, experienced DAs. Come on.
Yeah, no, I agree with that as well. I thought I completely agree. The first time, definitely. Second time, though, I felt that he was looking to see what Lindsay's moral compass was because he was
Yeah.
trying to get an assessment of where her mind was going, where her mind was at while these crimes, these acts were committed. So I didn't think it
Yeah.
was as bad the second time around. I could
Yeah.
see where it was in a certain context it would be okay to delve into what is her baseline as far as morality goes. You
And
have to
I'll
know
tell
that.
you, PQ190, one of your viewers,
Yep.
wonderful statement, and I'll add to that. They write jury had to deal with supporters in pink outside. Jurors also had to deal with the fact that red went a little too far with certain comments, right? I mean, the
Mhm.
DA messed up, but Reddington, oh my gosh, there were
Yeah.
certain things he said that were all like, oh my God, you can say that in court, not get in trouble. If I
I
said
know.
that in an LA courtroom, the judge would be like, you cannot say that sidebar.
Yeah.
He had made little statements, especially when he went after Mac. Oh
Oh,
my
Mac.
gosh. And not addressing him properly. And why are you smiling? Will you find
Yeah.
something to smile at? it was, really both sides had little things in this that really, as a viewer, made it very interesting. And as an attorney, I was thinking the whole time, God, I wish I could get away with that. But
There's no way you and I could get away with that as women. There's
no,
absolutely no way. Absolutely not. Yeah. I
yeah,
mean, only an old timer could get away with it. And I know that Judge Sullivan has had Reddington, because Reddington's from my county as well.
yeah,
So all this is happening in my own county. And I never got into the courtroom because, you have to make a decision. I felt that I had to live stream it, and
yeah.
I should have gone in though. But yeah, old timer, Massachusetts. That's what it is. And I think, oh, I know. Here's one
Yeah.
thing. So a lot of people commented in my chat about they thought the judge wasn't neutral enough and he was favoring Reddington a little bit. Did you notice that? What did you think about that?
Do you want an honest answer?
No, I want you to lie.
Oh,
No, I want an honest answer, of course.
oh, okay. I did find it a little weird. Judges usually, they are so beholden to the prosecution. It was a nice relief for me that the judge really, really was very kind to Mr. Reddington. It did seem like the judge really did like Mr. Reddington. It was hard not to see it. And look, the judge was really good, but he's
Yeah,
also a human being. And let's be honest, he's a really likable guy. I mean, and that says a lot for a courtroom.
yeah,
Reddington's style, the you can tell he's no nonsense. You get what you get. There's no fakeness to him. And
right.
that is a wonderful part of being a defense attorney. We are allowed to be real because the jurors see past it. But I do think the judge really liked him and was very beholden to him, and really
Yeah.
should have snapped at him a few times for different things and chose not to. But Reddington, he's just a likable. He's the guy that you want to have the beer with, and just
Yeah, 100%.
right,
And I wonder, yeah, I'm sure the judge and Reddington go way back, although the judge
yeah,
knows those prosecutors quite well too. And I liked at the end of the trial how the judge uh, commended both sides and
yeah,
how the attorneys saying you guys tried a wonderful case, and they really did. It's such a high pressure thing, and it's such an emotional case. It was emotional for everyone and tough with the jurors. So yes, and I know that you have plans. Oh, so we still have some time. I know you have lunch with your husband
Margaret,
coming
I
up.
could talk to you for weeks on everything. I mean, and your viewers, their comments are
Oh, I
fantastic.
know. I love this chat, and I'm so happy that it's building. And I love the fact that what I'm trying to create, and I know you are too, is kind of a
Yeah.
judgment-free zone where
Yes.
everybody's entitled to an opinion without being, attacked for it and all that. So I'm trying, and we try to bring our legal analysis and reasoning into it as well. But our human aspect, and I've been around for a long time, and I feel like as I've gotten older, I've gotten wiser, and so I'm trying to bring that as well. And I'm learning still every day.
Amen. It is the practice of law. Margaret, I want to ask you something kind of funny. Not funny, but something that's been in my mind nonstop. If Andrea Yates was tried today, you
Ooh.
know, I wonder, now that we understand mental health so much more, do you think she would have had this type of compassion from the United States and beyond? Or do you think that Lindsay Clancy and everything she is just so different because she was the nurse? She looks so, I don't know, she tried to kill herself. She looks very beautiful and very put together. Do you think it would have been different if Andrea Yates was today?
I don't know. I don't know if I can answer that because I'm finding that there are, especially in the chats, there are so many people that feel that Lindsay is still guilty, and
Yeah,
based on
you're
this
right.
the evidence and everything. So I am not sure. I know I talked to Judge Lou yesterday. He came on the
Oh,
show,
yeah,
and he, in his experience, he's a retired Massachusetts judge, and he said just the not guilty by reason of insanity is very hard
yeah,
for a win for the
yeah,
defense, and especially here he said in his opinion that jurors have to get beyond. I mean, it's number one thing is those 3 children.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes this case so difficult. Like, for example, if she had done this to Patrick, like if she had unalived him instead of the 3 children, I think it would have been easier for the defense. But the fact that she had such beautiful young children, I think they're the victims here, and it's just so terribly sad. So I don't know. I think anytime children are involved, it's very tough. That's just my 2 cents. I don't know.
I agree.
But what do you think?
I will tell you, I'm very, very grateful that we are moving towards understanding. I've always said that mental illness, it's like the cancer that you can't see. I think this trial will be the bellwether going forward. Once we know what the jury is going to say, whether it's a hang, whether it's a not guilty by reasons of insanity or a guilty, right?
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a bellwether of how we go forward when doing our trials with mental illness. And I wouldn't wish mental illness upon
anyone. I agree.
When you love someone and you see this hidden issue, I'll never forget, my mom had gone through a stroke, and thank God, knock on wood, she's doing great now. But
good.
one of the younger doctors, my mom is 91, had prescribed an antipsychotic, and I never understood why. And during the middle of the night, I got a call where my mother, who's a born-again Christian, a nurse, ER nurse for decades, very like her, she is with it. Like she has a better memory than me. She'd be one hell of a trial attorney. They had given her Seroquel. My mom lost her mind. She called saying that the hospital was under attack. My mother doesn't own a gun. She's never had guns, but she goes, buy guns, bring your husband. We need to fight. And I was like, Mom, I started laughing. My mom goes, I have never been more serious in my life. We are under attack. And then after 12 hours, I called the nurses. She got out of the psychosis, and she goes, my God, I don't even know what happened. She said, I don't know who I was. She said, I've never felt that way in 90 years. There are absolute effects to medication that occur. The issue is, I've never seen anything like it. Not from my mother, from my clients, but not from my mom. And my mom is so against guns too. Like, it was a shock.
Yeah. Did she remember the hospital being attacked and what she thought was the hospital? Did she remember any of her psychosis? So my family friend can't remember anything when she's been in psychosis unless she's just saying that and she's too embarrassed.
Yeah. By the way, Margaret, I love Pearl Jam 507. I'm so torn. We are so torn. All of us are Pearl Jam. There's no right answer to this.
I know.
But yeah, my mom she actually remembered the fear. She said that she really did believe that she was under attack. She thought the nurses were undercover military. I said, Mom, why would they attack anybody? She goes, I just remember how fearful I felt. And she said that she felt her skin was on fire.
Wow.
And we lost our minds with the doctor. We said, why would you give this medication to a woman who didn't even feel this way? It was a stroke. So we were kind of, anyway, long story short, thank God, knock on wood, she's okay.
Yeah, but that is, that's.
Look at Michelle. Scary. Look, Margaret, my mother thought the doctors were FBI agents. It happens to all of us.
Yeah, definitely. My family friend, my family friend was hearing voices, and so too. And there was a person in the room, a made up person in her mind, and this person commanded her to kick us all out of the hospital. So I officially got kicked out of the mental hospital. I'm just, it is what it is. But yeah, like, it's a real thing. And I, honest to God, as a young prosecutor, and even, so when I was in my 20s and 30s, etc., I didn't really think much about mental illness. I didn't know anything about it. And now, having experienced the close family front, it's like, wow, it really opened my mind to a lot. And and I think this trial will too, just
I
listening
think,
to those experts.
and quickly, I know that we're limited on time. I'll tell you, this is one of those things that when you have direct contact, it is gut wrenching because
It is.
you feel like there is nothing you can do. And if that person is literally in the throes, you don't know what they can do. And that fear, coupled with unbelievable love, unconditional love, you don't wish it on anybody. And as an attorney, I just hope and pray, there's no better words for it, that one day, the one thing that we haven't been able to figure out is the human mind as much as
No.
other advancements, that we can learn enough about the mind that we can give help, solace, and tools to families dealing with family members that deal with this
Yeah.
every single day, and attorneys who deal with clients that they love, that they know they can't help adequately. One day we're going to figure it out. Maybe
Yeah.
AI will figure it out for us.
Yes, I know. And on that note, thank you so much, Silva, for coming on the show again. And everybody, the Law Lounge with Silva, it's wonderful. I'm a subscriber as well, and it's I think I love your shows, and I know you're so busy. It's just tough to put shows together. So thank you for doing it for people, because I think that it's wonderful that that people are so interested in the law. I feel like I'm teaching again.
Margaret, your content, I love your videos. I'm a subscriber of yours. Between your viewers who are so unbelievably astute and intelligent, and your analysis and the neutrality and the information, I feel like once people see our world, they understand the criminal process, and it becomes less about us against them and more about what we want. We all want justice. We want victims to be heard and seen, and we want clients to also, if we can fix it, we can prevent future conduct. That is what we strive for. Nobody is celebrating the death of these angels. Nobody is celebrating.
I know. And I'm going to put them up, right now. I'm going to put them into, I think we should end with the beautiful pictures of the children. And I'm going to put them up right now.
Nobody deserved what these children got.
I know. It's so sad. And I like the idea of ending with the victims, because it breaks my heart. And I know jurors are definitely thinking about the victims too. I hope they are.
And Margaret, though, I think in the jurors' minds, and I think the prosecutor shouted this way too, just seeing those babies' faces at their mom, the last vision they got was the one woman who should have protected them more than anybody in this world was putting them, unaliving them. That, I think, is a vision that the jury will never, the rest of their lives, they'll think of that. The rest of our lives, I mean, we see this a lot, unfortunately, in our careers. Those are the faces of purity and love and unconditionality, and they would have made this world better. And they're gone now. And there's no. Oh, and Sweet Caroline 929.
Yes.
Very sweet.
I agree with that. Silva is a gem. She's one of my favorites, and we have a lot more to talk about, a lot more cases, and enjoy your lunch out in LA. And I will talk to you soon, Silva. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Much love, brilliant one. Thank you for everything.
Okay. Bye.
Bye, hon.
And then I will just sign off. Let's see. Thank you, everybody, also for being a part of the chat. I love what we've built here. I love the chat and all the different opinions everybody has. So I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going on vacation or anything like that. I will be bringing you updates. So just put notifications on if you can, so that you can see when I'm scheduling a live. But in the meantime, thanks, everybody. I appreciate it. And thank you, Amber. Thank you so much, Amber, Amber's watching that courtroom feed all the time to make sure everybody. Hi, Amber. she's behind the scenes making sure if there's a verdict, we don't miss it. So, which is lovely. Amber's great. I appreciate everybody, my whole team, Amber Collier, and of course, Stephen Cohen, who I know was watching at some point. So thank you all. And right now I'm going to end the stream and hang on, Silva, so I can say goodbye to you.